Chapter 1240. Although he didn't know what had happened during this period of time. However, it was obvious that he was sitting comfortably in the front, while old Fong and the others must be dealing with the matters behind. After all, the degree of danger of the 5 families and 7 clans, as well as ensuring that the Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet and the opening ceremony would proceed normally, Zhang Feng wouldn't believe that there wasn't someone behind to block some troublemakers. Therefore, when he saw old Fong at this time, Zhang Feng felt a sense of familiarity. After personally cooking a few dishes for Fong Xianling, he sat opposite Fong Xianling. I haven't cooked for a long time, so my skills are a bit rusty. Zhang Feng said apologetically, eat while it's hot. Let's talk while eating. Fong Xianling smiled and stroked his beard. Looking at the blooming flowers, he was a bit speechless. In the end, he picked up his wine cup and drank 3 cups of wine. Only then did he feel much better. Putting down the wine cup, Fong Xianling regained his usual calmness and said with a smile, Fengzi, what are you talking about? Didn't I eat and drink for free every time I came? It's not good to spend so much money every time I come. But this time, we won't drink wine. You don't have much left, right? Later, I'll get someone to send you a few carts of wine to store. You also know that old Chen and the others never leave anything behind when they drink. If they drink it all, they'll come and bother you. When Zhang Feng heard this, he was instantly moved. Old Fong, you know me best. However, now that the winery has started brewing, the more wine we drink in the future, the more we drink. Zhang Feng saw that Fong Xuanling's expression wasn't right. After all, Fong Xianling looked about 70 years old. After working so hard, Zhang Feng felt embarrassed to persuade him to drink. Seeing that Fong Xianling was drinking with a heavy heart, Zhang Feng stopped Fong Xianling and said, Old Fong, I still have 300-year-old ginseng that I swindled from old Master Li and Lao Li. I'll get someone to send one to you later. You can boil it into soup and nourish yourself. Look at yourself. Look at how much you've shushed your body. You've only had a few cups of wine and you're already like this. That 100-year-old ginseng is good stuff. As long as you eat it, I guarantee that you'll be as energetic as a dragon and as fierce as a tiger. I can't bear to eat it. I'll get you a prescription later. You can go to the pharmacy and get another set of medicine. After eating 3 sets, I guarantee that you'll be 10 years younger. You can even go to Yanlai Lu to find some excitement. After Fong Xianling heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. Fengzi, don't make fun of me. With my body, it's useless no matter how much ginseng I eat, let alone find any excitement. You, please spare my old bones. It seemed that Zhang Feng really took it to heart. His eyes turned and instantly flashed with a touch of excitement. He nudged Fong Xianling with his elbow. He winked and said, Old Fong, after we finish eating, I'll take you to find some excitement since we're free anyway. However, after thinking about it, this was the Tang dynasty. Who hadn't been there before? Instead, it seemed that he was a little too much. Zhang Feng sighed and said, However, I reckon that you definitely know more than me. Maybe I'll need you to guide me this time. Fong Xianling finally couldn't stop. If he really went to Yanlai Lu to have fun, then within 2 hours, the whole of Chang'an would know. Moreover, when had he ever been to such a brothel? In an instant, Fong Xuanling's face turned red. Cough, cough, Fengzi, don't slander me. I'm a clean person and have always taken self-cultivation as my biggest hobby. How could I go to such a place? Zhang Feng was stunned. Scratching his head, he seriously doubted whether this old man was really not serious. He asked curiously, Where? This time, Fong Xianling was instantly speechless. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't plan to tease Fong Xianling anymore. He said, I'm talking about going to the farmland to wander around. Fong Xianling, okay, Fengzi, I know what you're thinking. We'll go later, but the premise is that you don't harm me. I'm already so old I can't afford to be tormented. If you want to cause trouble, wait for old Li and the others to come next time. You can go and cause trouble for them. They're the best at it. If I go there and die, are you going to take responsibility? Zhang Feng heard this and instantly gave up on the idea. Originally, he wanted to calm down and think about the future of the Science and Technology Department, as well as the phosphate fertilizer. But who knew that old Fong would suddenly barge in? Originally, he wanted old Fong to wander around with him and personally see the situation in the farmland. But now, it seemed that he could only give up and slowly think about it himself in the future. With this thought, Zhang Feng and Fang Xianling drank another cup of wine as an apology. Then he asked, "Old Fong, the thing I asked you to do last time, how's it going?" Fang Xianling had really forgotten about this matter. He didn't remember what Zhang Feng said before. Besides, this kid had always been talkative. How could he remember anything? Seeing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a little speechless. "But it seems that you really have forgotten everything. Let me remind you. Last time, I asked you to help me check the distribution of power of the 5 families and 7 clans in Chang'an city." Chapter 1241. Only then did Fang Xianling realize what was going on. "Hey, you're talking about that time? You should have said so earlier. You made me think for a long time, but I still don't know which time you're talking about." Fang Xianling thought for a while, then simply took out a piece of paper from his arms and handed it to Zhang Feng. The paper was still the same straw paper. Although the current supply of white paper and the free paper they needed every month was enough for them to squander, how could Fang Xianling, who was used to being thrifty, be willing to waste it here? He also knew that Zhang Feng had a lot of paper here. If you want to look at it, you can copy it yourself. Sure enough, Zhang Feng looked at the yellowed and hard straw paper and stared at Fang Xianling speechlessly. "Old Fang, can't you be a little more generous? This thing is already rotten on the street. Why are you still so stingy?" "Ahem, this is thrifty. Do you know how to be thrifty?" Fang Xuanling's face turned red and he hurriedly defended himself. Zhang Feng was too lazy to argue with him. After all, every businessman was like this, right? Zhang Feng didn't study this matter. Instead, he looked at the floor plan of Chang'an city in front of him. All the buildings on the map were roughly distinguished, but there were still some places that were a little blurry. These blurry places, according to Zhang Feng's memory, seemed to be abandoned places where no one lived. Although it didn't look like much on a normal day, when he looked at them together, it still shocked Zhang Feng. My goodness, there seemed to be a lot of places in Chang'an city that were empty. Where was this? This was Chang'an city, the hub of the Tang dynasty. If this place was like this, it could be seen how other places in the Tang dynasty were like. At this time, as Zhang Feng's eyes moved, he gradually saw some marked red dots, blue dots, and black dots on the map, as well as the small tavern and the Zhang mansion's villa that were circled. He was a little curious. My tavern and my mansion, why are they all circled? What does this mean? This, Fang Xianling was a little speechless. However, he rolled his eyes and said, "This thing was obtained from the Central Secretariat through my connections. Therefore, this thing was also copied out for me. They said that the areas marked with circles are places that are heavily protected. As for the black and red areas, the black areas represent the 5 surnames and 7 clans, the red areas represent the Guanlong area. As for the yellow and blue areas, they represent the strongholds of foreign tribes in Chang'an, as well as the businesses of the Hu merchants in Chang." After explaining for a long time, Fang Xianling finally explained it to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng also clicked his tongue in wonder as he looked at the map. He slowly put it into his bosom. He admired Li Shimin's ability. Although he had never seen this emperor who could compete with him, he could see Li Shimin's great talent and strategy from this map. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't enter the palace, he would have already gone to the palace to greet him. But now was not the time to ask about this. Zhang Feng put away the map, then looked at Fang Xianling and said, "Old Fang, have you encountered some troubles recently? Why do I feel that you are always listless and absent-minded today?" When it came to serious matters, Fang Xianling was a little embarrassed. After all, these things, he wanted to save face. But at this time, Fang Xianling still said, "You are very famous. Yesterday, I went to visit Fang Liang, the head of the secretariat. Although Fang Liang is from my family, our relationship is quite distant. But he has been praising you. He wanted me to ask you if you are interested in being the head of the secretariat." Zhang Feng was a little speechless. What are you talking about? Although the head of the secretariat is good, it is a little inappropriate to talk about this at this time, right? Zhang Feng was also confused by Fang Xianling. He did not know what old Fang wanted to do. Could it be something big happened? Otherwise, why would he be in a hurry to introduce him to an official position? Zhang Feng could not say it clearly. He could only go along with Fang Xianling and wait for an opportunity to see if he could get some useful information out of him. Otherwise, Zhang Feng had already formally asked twice and Zhang Feng did not say anything. If he asked a third time, the result would be the same. If you don't ask, then I will just directly get it out of you. Although it would take a lot of effort, at least Zhang Feng would know the key points of the matter. Zhang Feng pretended to be surprised and said, "Old Fang, when old son introduced me to the Ministry of Personnel, I was too lazy to go. Now you are telling me this? Tell me, are you thinking about my phosphate fertilizer and the method that can increase the production of the crops?" Lao Li is really something. I just said it, and now it has already reached the head of the Secretariat? So, it seems that in the future, I still have to hold back. Otherwise, even the slightest bit of good things will be ruined. Now, the business that was originally profitable is gone, right? Fang Xianling was stunned. What phosphate fertilizer are you talking about? Is there any way to increase the production? In an instant, Zhang Feng understood. He was thinking too much. Damn, I was too careless. Why did I tell him this? Chapter 1242. Zhang Feng really wanted to slap himself. He had completely forgotten that old Fang was Lao Li's housekeeper and was in charge of this huge family business. It was also the autumn planting season. Why did I bring this up myself at this time? Of all people, I'm the one who brought it up. Zhang Feng quickly changed the topic before Fang Xianling could react. Old Fang, I've been thinking about something. It's been so long. I've met old Chen, Lao Li, old Sun, and old Wei's son, but you're the only one who's so mysterious. I've never heard them mention you before. Could it be that you have a daughter? At this point, Zhang Feng winked at Fang Xianling. How about it? What does your daughter look like? Do you want to? Fang Xuanling's expression instantly changed. So, my daughter is married. Don't think about harming her, but after saying that, Fang Xianling hesitated. But I have a son in my family. He's currently at Chang'an University. Zhang Feng frowned. Why is he at Chang'an University? Why didn't you tell him to come to White Deer College? Seeing Fang Xuanling's hesitation, Zhang Feng said, "Tell me, what's your son's name? I'll get someone to inform old Xiaocai and have him immediately scram up the mountain." That isn't good. After all, it won't be good for his reputation. What's so bad about his reputation? The school is mine. I have the final say. Zhang Feng waved his hand. Seeing how smart you are, I'm sure your son won't be too bad, right? When the time comes, I'll just let him go up the mountain. At least he can take care of Tai Nyo and the others. Most importantly, I'm in urgent need of someone with a sharp mind. Fang Yi had a sharp mind? Fang Xianling could not help but have a question mark in his heart. He had been busy with government affairs for the past few years. Regarding the discipline of his children, he basically had to ask about some things every day. Even during this period of time, because they frequently left the palace, he had been dealing with the aftermath. Therefore, even if they lived in the same residence, he rarely saw Fang Yai. When Zhang Feng said this, Fang Xianling couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Thinking of her son standing in front of her today, wanting to say something but not daring to, she felt even more ashamed. Although he had agreed to this matter, in the end, it was Zhang Feng who took the initiative to ask him. This was the failure of a father, but what could Fang Xianling do? Since ancient times, loyalty and filial piety were difficult to achieve. Ever since he chose to work in the imperial court, he rarely cared about his family's affairs. However, when he heard Zhang Feng say that he needed someone with a sharp mind, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "What are you going to do? Weren't Li Gong and the others here? Don't tell me you're going to do that so-called technology thing?" Fang Xianling had indeed heard of this before, but Zhang Feng had never mentioned it. Furthermore, Zhang Feng had been busy all this time, so everyone had forgotten about it. However, now that Zhang Feng mentioned it, he really remembered. This was Zhang Feng's goal in establishing White Deer College. As for the so-called college, in Fang Xuanling's opinion, it was just a cover. However, this college was originally meant to be a cover. Now, it seemed that this kid had built the college like an iron bucket. Even Fang Xianling wanted to go there and learn a thing or two from the academy. However, at this moment, when Fang Xianling was about to forget about this matter, Zhang Feng actually mentioned it. Could the so-called phosphate fertilizer be the key to promoting the development of this technology institute? After all, they were all aware of Niu Jinda's poisoning. How could they not know about this? Could this poisonous thing really be used by the Zhuang family? Would it be all right for them to eat it? These were all things that needed to be considered. Right now, the Tang dynasty did indeed need food, the army, and the people. These were all the foundations of the imperial court. However, they didn't have these things now. Everything was a waste of time. At this moment, when he saw that Zhang Feng wasn't speaking, Fang Xianling started to get anxious. Fengzi, tell us. What exactly is this phosphate fertilizer? Are you sure it's harmless to the Zhuang family and people? Zhang Feng believed that they all knew about old Niu's matter. Zhang Feng didn't intend to hide this matter. At this moment, when he heard Fang Xuanling's question, Zhang Feng nodded. This needs to be refined and purified. Although it's simple, there are many hidden dangers. For example, phosphorus poisoning. If it's not handled properly, there will be problems. That's why I need talents. Only people with sharp minds can learn scientific knowledge faster. I don't have time to wait. If I continue to wait, my college's kitchen will be cut off at the beginning of spring next year. When Fang Xianling heard this, he couldn't help but have some ideas. He said, Fengzi, why don't you go to the Central Secretariat? This way, you can get reimbursed for everything you need. You don't have to spend a single cent. At the very least, if someone dies in your laboratory, no one will cause you any trouble. Chapter 1243. The reason why Fang Xianling wanted Zhang Feng to go to the head of the Secretariat was because, on the one hand, the head of the Secretariat was indeed the place where the imperial edicts had to pass through. Moreover, all the memorials sent to the emperor had to pass through here. It could be said that this was the center of power. Once Zhang Feng went to the head of the Secretariat, even if it was just an idle job, it was still better than other departments. The most important thing was the phosphate fertilizer and other things, as well as the research institute. Even if he didn't say anything, would Li Shaogong and Zhang Sun Wuji let go of Zhang Feng? If that was the case, he might already be waiting for Zhang Feng at the top of the mountain with the recommendation letter that had been stamped. What was Zhang Feng? He knew that once Zhang Feng went to any department, not only would it be the most lucrative job, but the most beautiful thing was that this kid was quick-witted and could do everything in an orderly manner. For example, the check-in function that he had created before was the thing that the emperor liked the most during Fang Xuanling's tenure. At this time, although Fang Xianling and the others' families were indeed poor, since the cooperation with Zhang Feng and the joint operation of the paper factory, even Wei Jing, who used to be poor but received a lot of help from the emperor, became rich. There was no need to talk about this. This was a matter of face. Although the emperor couldn't talk about it now, it was the emperor's business. He had to get him an idle job first. After all, in Fang Xuanling's opinion, Zhang Feng's entry into the imperial court was not far away. It was just a matter of a sentence, and there was time to talk about it at any time. However, the emperor still didn't say anything. He knew that the emperor was waiting for an opportunity, a suitable opportunity. Now it seemed that this opportunity was the autumn planting. If Zhang Feng really managed to get this thing out, then it would be an understatement to say that the Tang dynasty could become the world's granary in an instant. However, Zhang Feng was a little unhappy about this. I say, old Feng, why don't you ask me to go to the Ministry of Agriculture or the Ministry of Works? If you ask me to go to these two places now, I might go there right now. But what do you think the head of the Secretariat is? Tell me, which of these things I'm doing now have anything to do with the Secretariat? Fang Xianling thought to himself, as expected. Fortunately, he came early. Otherwise, if that old guy Li Shaogong took the initiative, then now, Fang Xianling laughed and filled Zhang Feng's glass with wine. He wanted to use the old method to get Zhang Feng drunk. However, he was not Zhang Sun Wuji, nor was he Qing Yaojin, nor was he Yu Qigong. When it came to serious matters, he could speak clearly and logically, but when it came to the art of drinking, he was really not as good as Zhang Feng. At this time, how could Zhang Feng not know Fang Xuanling's intention? He could also see Fang Xuanling's intention. Such a jerky action could be seen by anyone. On the contrary, Zhang Feng drank neither too fast nor too slow. As he drank, Fang Xianling choked. After 3 rounds of wine, Zhang Feng asked, "Old Fang, I'll tell you the truth. Now, as long as it's related to profit, it's best not to touch it." In an instant, Fang Xianling sobered up. He hurriedly asked, "Why?" Zhang Feng mysteriously got close to Fang Xuanling's ear and said, "Do you still need to say it? Didn't you see that the emperor made a division of interests before? That is, the matter of choosing a new team. Do you still remember?" How could Fang Xianling not remember this matter? Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Fang Xianling nodded. He was a little surprised and thought of something, then said, "You mean, the emperor will make a big move?" Zhang Feng smiled but didn't say anything. Although he was just guessing, according to his habits, it was certain. Moreover, last time when he was drunk, during the mid-autumn hunt, he had heard Li Shaogong talk about some things in the court. In addition, many of his thoughts were similar to the emperor's. In addition, Lao Li and the others were very close to Lord Zhongsun. Who was Lord Zhongsun? He was Li Shimin's brother-in-law. How could the emperor not know what he knew? Therefore, Zhang Feng had a bold guess. At this time, he was targeting the people of the 5 surnames and 7 major clans with great fanfare. If he did this, who in the world would be the one who wanted these landowning clans to suffer the most? That was the current emperor. At this time, if they cooperated with each other, the 5 surnames and 7 noble families were bound to fight back. This time, if the emperor really wanted to touch the 5 surnames and 7 noble families, it would be best to do it in the court. At the very least, if a corrupt official came to investigate, it would be guaranteed to be accurate. But at this time, asking him to go to the secretariat? Unless Zhang Fengxiu was joking. At this time, he was going to be a scapegoat? He wasn't stupid. Most importantly, the people in the secretariat, although they were all powerful, to put it bluntly, they were just secretaries. This was an occupation that offended people. Therefore, Zhang Feng wouldn't go no matter what. But at this time, he couldn't say it clearly. He could only let Fang Xianling figure it out himself. At this time, Fang Xianling actually didn't fully understand. If he understood, he did, but if he didn't, he really didn't understand. He was still saying good things about the secretariat. In any case, if Zhang Feng didn't go to the secretariat, it would be Zhang Feng's loss and so on. Zhang Feng was speechless. He didn't understand what this stubborn old man wanted to do. He could only say helplessly, "Old Fang, no matter what you say, I won't go to the secretariat." But Zhang Feng didn't want to say it clearly, but at this time, Fang Xianling obviously didn't understand the meaning of Zhang Feng's words. Zhang Feng could only sigh and say, "I'll tell you. You must not spread it out." While speaking, Zhang Feng whispered in Fang Xuanling's ear, "Actually, the people in the secretariat are all scammers." Chapter 1244. When Fang Xianling heard this, his expression was very interesting. Were the people of the secretariat all deceiving people? This was the most hurtful thing he had ever heard. For example, a little toy that you carefully protected, an industry, in the end, in the eyes of others, this toy of yours is actually worthless. Tell me, would you be happy? Some things really couldn't be played like this. No. Who did you hear that from? The secretariat is the hub that controls all the information in the world. People who want to enter can take pictures of your academy from the entrance of the palace. How can you say that? And look at the secretariat. It's the closest place to the emperor. It's far away from all the disputes. This time, the head of the secretariat wants to recruit you. You have to think carefully. Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted his nagging and said hurriedly, "Old Fang, I know you are investing in me with good intentions. But these things are not the right way. Relying on the heavens, the earth, and others is nonsense. Only relying on oneself is the right way. And why do you think the head of the secretariat likes me? It's nothing more than seeing that I'm doing well. And most importantly, they want me to come here. Think about it. Guess what they want to do? They want to take away my White Deer College's industry and the Science and Technology Institute. They don't want the Ministry of Works to take them away. If I can't think of this, aren't you looking down on me, Zhang Feng? He was wronged. This was a great injustice. Fang Xianling wanted Zhang Feng to go to the secretariat. This was a thought from the bottom of his heart. He didn't have any other thoughts. Most importantly, Zhang Feng's industry was basically related to the emperor. The only thing that wasn't related to him was the phosphate fertilizer that had just been released. Fang Xianling couldn't help but ask curiously again, is the phosphate fertilizer you mentioned really that good? Zhang Feng nodded. If I'm not wrong, once the phosphate fertilizer is released, it will sell even better than salt and paper. This is impossible. Fang Xianling was so excited that his face turned red. Are you sure? I'm sure. Think about it. Even if we don't talk about the current famine, do you think any of the commoners wouldn't eat? I think you should know better than me about doing business, right? Fang Xianling raised his eyebrows. It would be great if he knew how to do business. The problem was that he didn't know how to do business. At this moment, he could only cup his fists and let Zhang Feng explain to him. Zhang Feng was also a little suspicious. What kind of business did Lao Li do that he actually sent old Feng over? Wasn't this just fooling around? Don't you know how to look at the market? Even a dabbler like him knew more than the rest of them. I'll explain it to you today. Zhang Feng said after thinking for a while. What could Fang Xianling say? He hurriedly prepared a bowl of wine for Zhang Feng and poured it into Zhang Feng's mouth. Of course, he drank a lot of wine. Zhang Feng smiled and said, Old Feng, when do you want to come to my academy to study? I'll let that kid, Chen Wanli, tell you about it. After all, this kid is the fastest learner in the trade path. I estimate that in less than 5 years, this kid's achievements in the trade path will definitely surpass any of the 5 families and 7 major clans. Fang Xianling couldn't help but be surprised. But after thinking about his old face, he finally refused. If he went to the mountains to study, it would be a disgrace and a disgrace. The ancestors of his Fang family would probably go to the mountains with knives and talk to him about life. Seeing this, Zhang Feng could only wave his hand and said, This is just a joke. Let's talk about the phosphate fertilizer. What I'm going to say, you must not spread it out. They know about it for now, but they don't dare to spread it out. Once this thing is spread out, it will be a big joke. Zhang Feng stood up and said, This is the most important part of dealing with the 5 families and 7 major clans. Fang Xianling heard this and hurriedly said with a serious face, Don't worry about this. I will never spread it out. Zhang Feng nodded. Now wheat and millet are the main cash crops of the Tang dynasty, and these things are basically in the hands of those big families and those rich families. I know that now in Chang'an city, even a third-grade official's family has at least 100 mu of fertile land. Sometimes the emperor will also include land in his rewards. But who can eat the grain in these fertile lands? That would be strange. Didn't the food they produced end up in the people's rice bowls? But what about the common people? How many fields can they have? How barren will their fields be? I even know that some people don't even have enough for themselves to eat all year round. How sad do you think this is? Moreover, although the current Great Tang is no longer in the era of slash and burn, when it comes to irrigation, fertility, and fertilization, it's still very lax. Basically, people rely on the heavens to make a living. The ordinary people are better off. If they raise a few cows, goats, and pigs, they can still put some fertilizer into the fields. But what about those people who easily have hundreds of mu of fertile land? How can they have so much fertilizer? And those people who have dozens of mu of farmland basically hire workers and tenant farmers to plant for them. As you can imagine, it's strange if they can get a good harvest. And the most important point is that they don't know how to use the fertilizer reasonably. And if the fertilizer is too thick, it's harmful to the farmers. So at this time, the role of this phosphate fertilizer is reflected. Its biggest role is to dilute the pH in the soil. It can increase the yield of the original 3 dan per mu by a level in an instant, and it can double the yield. Speaking of this, Zhang Feng looked at Fang Xianling, who had already fallen into a state of shock, and asked, "Old Fang, now tell me, what do you think of my phosphate fertilizer? Can it still go to the Secretariat?" Chapter 1245. Could he go? Was there a need to ask? He didn't know the situation before, so it was reasonable for Fang Xianling to invite him. Now that Zhang Feng had made everything clear, whoever dared to intervene in this matter, what would that be? That was simply courting death. And it was a capital offense that no one could escape. After all, who would dare to intervene in something that even the emperor didn't dare to mess around with? What was that? It was the people's granary. At this moment, Fang Xianling didn't say anything. He made a fist salute and was ready to leave. He also understood why Zhang Feng went down the mountain at this critical moment. And he didn't even go home. He wanted to find a way to solve this problem. However, Zhang Feng hurriedly pulled Fang Xianling back. He winked and said, "Don't go, old Fang. I said that I'll take you to have fun later. Why are you in such a hurry?" Seeing Zhang Feng's expression, Fang Xianling felt a chill. "I really don't suit that kind of place. After all, that place really doesn't suit me." Zhang Feng glanced at Fang Xuanling's thin body and said, "What are you thinking about? Let's go. I'll take you to a place to relax. I didn't say that I'll take you to drink wine." Fang Xianling. Half an hour later, Zhang Feng and Fang Xianling arrived at the Shirley Slope outside Chang'an city. After the fire caused by the locust plague, the woods here were more lush and green. After passing through the woods, they came to the field area located at the Shirley Slope. Guanzhong was mostly a plain, so at this time, the Shirley Slope was an endless stretch of yellow land. At this time, there were shouts everywhere. Cattle and people galloped in the fields, and the yellow and black land that was still emitting black smoke was flying under the plow. Zhang Feng finally knew why there was so much haze in Xi. They didn't know if it was because of the large area of burning straw. Zhang Feng pointed at the people who were burning straws further away, or who were throwing leaves from trees onto the burning land. He asked in shock, "Old Feng, what are these people doing? Could it be that your farming is like this now?" Fang Xianling didn't know what Zhang Feng meant. He asked, "Is there any other way?" Alas! Zhang Feng sighed painfully. He finally understood why the output of the people in this era was low. Because of this, the alkalinity of the soil increased year by year. It would be ridiculous if they could have a good harvest. "I say, old Feng, this is where you guys are wrong. If this really works, Zhang Feng, will write it backwards tomorrow." Fang Xianling was a little confused. Since ancient times, it has always been like this. First, we use fire ash, then we add some farm manure and stuff like that. Isn't it all good? Why can't it work when it comes to you? Zhang Feng shook his head. "It's not that it doesn't work. Forget it, you won't understand even if I tell you." Come, old Feng." Fang Xianling squatted down suspiciously. Zhang Feng grabbed a handful of soil and handed it to Fang Xianling, saying, "Try it." As he spoke, Zhang Feng dipped a bit of soil into his mouth and said, "Try it." Fang Xianling was very conflicted, but seeing that Zhang Feng had eaten it, what else could he do? He copied Zhang Feng and picked up a piece of soil from the ground and threw it into his mouth without looking. Instantly, a sour taste and a rotten smell made Fang Xianling almost vomit. Seeing this, Zhang Feng spat out the soil in his mouth and rinsed his mouth with the wine in the wine bag he carried with him. Then, he handed the wine bottle to Fang Xianling and asked, "How is it? Now you know the taste, right?" Zhang Feng ignored Fang Xianling and went back into the forest. He searched for a piece of dry white soil under the roots and handed it to Fang Xianling again. "Try this soil." Fang Xianling didn't speak at this time. He took the soil from Zhang Feng's hand and threw it into his mouth. Instantly, Fang Xuanling's expression froze. It was the same kind of mud, but the smell was completely different. The mud here had a fishy smell, and there was a bitter smell of dried leaves, but it didn't have the salty and astringent taste. This time, he couldn't help but be a little shocked. Zhang Feng smiled and said, "You noticed it too? Look, the distance from here to the field is less than 5 feet, But why is the soil like this? Fang Xianling asked in horror. Is it because of the salty alkalinity? But my phosphate fertilizer can neutralize the salty alkalinity in the soil. Think about it. If I soak you in a vat of vinegar all day, what will happen to you after a long time? Everyone will get sick, not to mention the farmers. Only by neutralizing the salty alkalinity in the soil and letting the nutrients completely volatilize can the farmers grow better. Thus, the grain output can increase dramatically. Although Fang Xianling didn't understand the principles behind it, he gradually understood. However, this incident allowed him to gradually understand something. For example, the fine salt, the white paper, and the braised meat were all similar things. However, after passing through Zhang Feng's hands, they had undergone an earth-shattering change in an instant. These things were originally very common items. But, thinking of this, Fang Xianling had a bold idea. Could it be that this kid could turn stone into gold? Chapter 1246. Fang Xianling also knew that this kid definitely did not know how to turn stone into gold. However, he was extremely concerned about the phosphate fertilizer. What was this? This was the true granary of the world. With this thing, he would not have to think about how to send the memorials requesting for food to the emperor every day. He would also not have to worry about it every night. At this time, he could not help but think of the scene of the commoners sleeping on the pile of food. He could not help but feel excited. Fang Xianling could not help but pull Zhang Feng to sit on the ridge of the field. He pointed to the commoners in the distance and said, "Fengzi, do you see that? I agree with what you said before." Zhang Feng was puzzled. "I said a lot of things. Which one are you talking about?" "The one you said at the opening ceremony. The commoners are the water, and the country is the boat. Have you forgotten?" Fang Xianling sighed from the bottom of her heart and said, "Do you know that as soon as you said this sentence, the entire literary world, as far as I know, stopped all opposition voices? Do you know why?" Zhang Feng thought of something, but he still wanted to hear what those restless fellows said. He pretended to be curious and asked, "What did you hear?" Fang Xianling was somewhat suspicious. "Are you sure you don't know?" Zhang Feng looked at Fang Xianling and shook his head like a rattle. "If I knew, why would I ask you? I just feel that it's strange. Why is Chang'an Street not as crazy as before? You saw it before. As long as I went out, it would definitely be packed. However, now that it's suddenly quiet, I feel that something might have happened." Fang Xianling was somewhat suspicious. Was this kid showing off? Looking at Zhang Feng's smug look, he could not help but ruthlessly pour cold water on him. "Why do you think that was before? That's only because they can see the good in you. To put it bluntly, in their hearts, you're still just a kid from Tong Huifang." When Zhang Feng heard this, he could not help but be stunned. He had never expected that old Fang would say such a thing. He hurriedly asked, "Go on. What's going on now?" Fang Xianling said with a smile, "Let me tell you. Think about it. Before you became famous, how many people surrounded you? On one hand, it's because you're friendly. That's because you're a neighbor. But what about after that? After you've made a name for yourself, those who are able to surround you are basically those who have taken a fancy to you and are able to gain some benefits from you. You should be able to understand, right?" Zhang Feng could not help but nod with a solemn expression. He really understood this. Wasn't this how the later generations were like? This was something that would happen in any era. There was an old saying. As the saying goes, the rich have distant relatives in the deep mountains, and the poor have no one to care about them in the busy city. This saying was very useful to anyone in any situation. Zhang Feng could not help but nod. If I didn't understand this, then I would be a fool. But what's going on now? Fang Xianling patted Zhang Feng's shoulder with a smile. Now, you're a great Confucian scholar. The most important thing is because of what you just said. Your identity has suddenly been elevated from a teacher of the academy to a great Confucian scholar. This all started from your words. A great Confucian scholar should act like a great Confucian scholar. This is also the reason why everyone subconsciously retreats when they see someone with a higher status than them. Then Fang Xianling said, "Now, you should understand, right? Before, you had the appearance of a great Confucian scholar, but you didn't have the demeanor and elegance that a great Confucian scholar should have. But now, your words are equivalent to setting a standard for yourself. Now look, who would dare to not respect you? Zhang Feng still did not understand the twists and turns, but at least he knew a little. Old Feng's meaning was actually very simple. He wanted to set a standard for himself. As long as he had this, he would basically be able to establish his own status. No wonder these people did not have the enthusiasm of the past when he came back this time. It turned out that the problem was here. Lao Tzu was also a person with status now? Taking advantage of the opportunity, Feng Xianling urged again, "How about it, Feng Zi? Do you want to consider going to the secretariat? This is a good opportunity. You only need to do an idle job in the secretariat, and the monthly salary are not small. How about I consider it?" Why was it this again? At this time, how could Zhang Feng be in the mood to think about this? Although it was very tempting, what kind of place was it? If he did not do it well, it would be a job that could kill him. Moreover, the head of the secretariat was Feng Xianling, who was known as Feng Mao and Du Duan. Did he dare to go? With his character and temper, in less than 3 days, he would be beaten to a pulp. Did he dare to go? He did not know what benefits this old man had received from Feng Xianling to encourage him to go to his death. Zhang Feng could not help but look up to the sky and sigh, "Alas! Old Feng, I see you as a brother, but forget it, we are all brothers on the surface." Chapter 1247. When Feng Xianling heard this, he couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Moreover, even if he offended Du Ruhui and the others who were officials in the same imperial court, he still had to take Zhang Feng under his command today. After all, Zhang Sun Wuji had done this before and the emperor hadn't said anything. After a series of events, everyone gradually forgot about this matter. However, it was also because he had come to ask Zhang Feng to get his son into White Deer College that Feng Xianling had an idea. He wanted to put Zhang Feng under his command in the secretariat. After all, this kid was an unparalleled talent. It would be heartless to not make use of such a talent. He had eyes but failed to see. At this moment, Feng Xianling didn't know how to describe the agitation and conflict in his heart. On one hand, it was because of the friendship between his comrades. On the other hand, it was because of the unparalleled talent Zhang Feng. It was obvious that Feng Xianling had chosen the latter after struggling for a while. "Feng Zi, I know that old Sun and Li Shaogong must have promised you something last time. However, you have to know that these two people were born military officers. They were born to be military men. Do you think that their Ministry of Appointments and Ministry of Works will be good? I know that you are biased towards the Ministry of Works. After all, it matches your profession. However, you have to think about the future. Think about it, the Secretariat is the closest place to the Emperor. Most importantly, the Secretariat is the department that directly participates in decision-making among the 3 provinces of the Tang dynasty. Even the Emperor's edicts have to go through the Secretariat to be drafted and finalized. Think about it again. Every day, memorials, documents, and reports from all over the country have to go through the Secretariat before they can be placed in front of the Emperor. What is this? Feng Xianling glanced at Zhang Feng. Seeing that Zhang Feng seemed to be moved, he continued patiently, "Think about it. If the Emperor wants to make a decision, he has to let Lord Feng and the ministers of the Secretariat go through a strict and careful discussion before they can formulate a plan. Only then can it be announced and implemented in the morning court. This means that the Secretariat can know things that others don't know much earlier than others. What does this mean? Sigh, that's why, Feng Zi, think about it now. Whether it's the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Works, or the other ministries of the Secretariat, who can compare with the Secretariat? Furthermore, the officials of the Secretariat only need to sit there and move their lips before writing something and throwing it out. Their subordinates will have to run around until their legs break. So, would you rather sit together with a bunch of old men and think about whether the rank of other officials should be lowered or promoted? Or would you rather go to the Ministry of Works and sweat with a bunch of craftsmen? Look at the Secretariat. All of them are top-notch talents in the Great Tang, and all of them are youths brimming with vitality. Tell me, would you rather work with them? This time, Fang Xianling said the words that had been in his heart in one breath. He instantly felt very comfortable. Although he had sold out his colleague, he had no regrets. As long as he could get Zhang Feng to work for him, he would have a meteoric rise. At that time, his back would be straighter than it was now. Compared to selling out his colleague, what was there to be afraid of? However, this also made Zhang Feng feel a little surprised. My goodness, this old Feng, who usually looked dull, turned out to be a King taciturn gourd. He was simply mischievous. However, judging from his constant advocacy of the Secretariat, he should have received a lot of benefits from Fang Xianling. Otherwise, they would definitely be a family with the surname Fang. According to Zhang Feng's knowledge, there were not many people with the surname Fang in the entire Tang dynasty. And the most important thing was that this grandson of his had almost made him confused in this short period of time. He was obviously afraid that others would come to pick the fruits of his labor. From this, Zhang Feng could vaguely see that he had attracted the attention of the people in the court after the Mid-Autumn Festival and the opening speech. Then, what about the people with the 5 surnames and 7 clans? Would they be attracted? Thinking of this, Zhang Feng felt that he could not make any decisions blindly at this time. Otherwise, if he was not careful, he would face a bottomless abyss. Old Feng, what you said is good, and this Secretariat is indeed the center of the world's power, but I still don't want to go. Fang Xianling saw that there was hope and hurriedly said, "Who said that you should go now? Lord Fang's intention is to let you have an idle job in the Secretariat first, and not to do anything. Just do what you need to do. Just do what you need to do. In the imperial examination 3 years later, just take the token from the Hall of Governmental Affairs and report to the Hall of Governmental Affairs. As for whether you will continue to hold a position in the Hall of Governmental Affairs or not, that's a matter for the future. Just do whatever you want. You see, how can there be such a good thing in this world? If it were me, I would have gone long ago. Why would I hesitate?" Chapter 1248. This was a little strange. The more Fang Xianling said this, the more Zhang Feng felt that something was amiss. He had read the old and new books of the Tang dynasty, so he knew about the division of labor between the 3 provinces and 6 ministries in the Tang dynasty. He also knew about the general ranking of officials and so on. However, as for the examination system of officials in the Secretariat and the promotion criteria, he was not clear about it. After all, he had transmigrated here before he could study it properly. Moreover, the things recorded in history were only the guesses of others and future generations about the current management level, as well as their own understanding. It did not represent the real situation. If it was really like what old Fang said, that the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Appointments, and even the Secretariat all required qualifications, then he didn't have much time to waste on this. After hesitating for a moment, Zhang Feng asked, "Is it really like what you said? Don't I think the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Appointments are doing well?" "Doing well?" Fang Xianling sighed and said, "The last time old son looked for you, he probably asked you to go to the Ministry of Appointments, right? You should know the set of rules of the Ministry of Appointments, but it does not mean that all departments need to be evaluated by the Ministry of Appointments." Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched and said, "Are the 3 provinces of the Secretariat excluded?" Fang Xianling nodded in appreciation, which was considered as tacit agreement with Zhang Feng. Seeing Zhang Feng's reaction, he felt that he had a chance. He slapped his thigh and said, "Hey, look at you, you don't believe your old brother, right? Your old brother is already so old. How can I possibly lie to you? When the day comes when you really go to the Central Secretariat, with the fame and reputation you've accumulated now, it's only a matter of time before you reach the heavens in a single bound. When that time comes, us old brothers will have to rely on you. How could I possibly harm you?" Fang Xianling continued to persuade him earnestly, "This is all from my experience. You'll be right if you listen to it. This is knowledge that can be used for a lifetime. The way of dealing with people is experience that no amount of intelligence can exchange. Besides, you might as well go outside and ask around. Which one of those who can hold a high position in the court didn't come from the Secretariat? By the way, go back and ask your wife, Jingshu. She knows a lot more than you. Moreover, this matter of being an official, if you don't go to the secretariat, it'll be a wasted trip. Zhang Feng was speechless. Forget it, forget it. I won't go. Now that you mention it, I really have to think about it. This time, Feng Xianling was really anxious. He was about to do it, but Zhang Feng pulled back at the last moment. Fengzi, you have to listen to my advice. If you don't listen to your elders, you'll be at a disadvantage. Besides, you're going to enter the court as an official sooner or later. What's the difference between earlier and later? It's just a position in name. The more Zhang Feng listened, the more he felt that there was a big problem. He shook his head and said, No, I won't think about it for now. The main task now is to get the phosphate fertilizer. As for other matters, we'll talk about it after the autumn planting. All right, I saw that you came with a worried face. We're all brothers. Tell me, why did you come here? Seeing that Zhang Feng changed the topic, Feng Xianling knew that it would be pointless to continue. Who was Zhang Feng? How could he not think of this? Feng Xianling couldn't help but sigh and give up. This matter couldn't be rushed. If he did, things would go wrong. Feng Xianling could only think about it and said, It's because my son wants to come to White Deer College. That's why I brought this matter up. Zhang Feng couldn't help but smile when he heard this. That's right. You said it was your problem. Wasn't it just a matter of one sentence? Why did you have to talk so much? This was a long-term matter. It had to be done slowly. After thinking it through, Zhang Feng said, I knew it. It's just a small matter. Can't you just ask him to go? All right, your son should be the same age as Tainyo and the others, right? Feng Xianling nodded. He's a few years older. Zhang Feng asked again, Then why haven't you seen him before? It's been so long. That shouldn't be the case. Has he been outside all this time? It'd be strange if you could see him. My son has to clean up your mess every time. How could he have the time to come? Besides, when he's done, how could he have the time to come here? He kicked Chengchumo and the other bastards into Chang'an University. If it weren't for the fact that you made such a big commotion, why would he be in such a hurry to stand up? However, Feng Xianling didn't dare to say that. He could only smile and say, Isn't this because I've been busy with my business? Oh right, the sword that Lao Li gave you was escorted back by my son from Longyu Road. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be enlightened. I see. It seems that your kid is not simple. This time, he should be able to do it. However, when you mentioned Chang'an University just now, I have a new idea. Feng Xianling didn't know what Zhang Feng wanted to do. He asked, What did you think of? Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously. Nothing. I just thought of something exciting. However, your son probably can't go up the mountain this time. Chapter 1249. Feng Xuanling's expression froze. His purpose for coming here was to let his son go up the mountain. If he couldn't, then wouldn't he have come here for nothing? Thinking of this, Feng Xianling became anxious. Fengzi, what do you mean? Look at the situation now. Don't joke around. I'm not joking. Zhang Feng spread his hands and said, I said that there's no need to go up the mountain because I'm preparing to set up a science laboratory in Chang'an University. It's a laboratory that specializes in cultivating new varieties of wheat. As the saying goes, great hermits hide in the city. I'm preparing to set up a physics class in White Deer College here. After all, there are too many people on the mountain. If there are too many people, some confidential information is bound to be leaked. I don't want the whole world to know about some trivial matters. Zhang Feng still remembered that he had told Lao Li and the others that Chang'an University was just an office. However, White Deer College was developing too quickly, so much so that the glory of Chang'an University had been overshadowed. If this continued, for example, if he was said to be Old Feng's son, even other people would think of ways to find him and beg him to go to White Deer College. If that's the case, I might as well chase them all up the mountain and hide Chang'an University in the middle of the city. Then, wouldn't that cripple Wang have a lot of old soldiers and brothers? Then, I'll take all of them and use them to control the situation. In this case, the people inside could do their experiments in peace, while the people outside would still think that Chang'an University was a stubborn paradise and would avoid it. Then, Fang Xianling narrowed his eyes. You mean, you want to move that physics laboratory to Chang'an City? Didn't you just say that if that thing isn't handled properly, it will lead to poisoning? This is the Imperial City. If something goes wrong, it will lead to a disaster. You have to think about it carefully. Zhang Feng had just said that this thing couldn't be placed in Chang'an City. Now that it was in Chang'an City, it was simply an unstable existence. What if the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans found out about it? They only needed to use a little trick and it would be a disaster. Zhang Feng nodded and stood up. He walked slowly towards Chang'an City with Fang Xianling. He pointed at Chang'an City and said, "Old Fang, look at this Chang'an City. Doesn't look like a cage?" "Huh." Fang Xianling was shocked and hurriedly said, "Feng Zi, you can't say that. This is the Imperial City. If you say that and others hear it, you will lose your head." Fang Xianling didn't know that Zhang Feng dared to say that. At this time, it was a little late to react. Fortunately, there were no outsiders at this time. Zhang Feng also realized something. This was the Tang dynasty. If such a big disrespect was spread out, he would be beheaded. But was Zhang Feng afraid? At this time, even if Niu Weili knew, he wouldn't dare to catch him. However, he still couldn't say what he shouldn't say. Zhang Feng changed his way of saying, "I was wrong. The whole Chang'an City is protected by walls on all sides. Don't you think it is a siege? Although there are Qinling Mountains in the south, Longzhou Mountain in the top, Guanshan on the left, and the Yellow River on the right, but..." Zhang Feng wanted to talk about the siege, but he thought about it and decided not to. No matter how much he said, if others couldn't understand, wouldn't it be like playing the lute to a cow? Then the two got on their respective cars and parted ways. Zhang Feng was still sitting on the sliding pole. However, before Zhang Feng reached the city gate, Niu Weili was alarmed. Niu Weili wanted Zhang Feng to sit on his sedan no matter what, saying that it would embarrass him. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be confused. Wasn't he just sitting on the sliding pole? Why couldn't he do it? Zhang Feng was a little speechless. But he still got into the sedan under the expectant and pleading eyes of Niu Weili and the others. There was no other way. How could he not bow under the eaves? After a while, Zhang Feng was swaying and didn't pay attention to the outside. Then he heard excited shouts from outside the sedan. Only then did Zhang Feng remember that he was pulled home. "Master is back. Go and inform the madam. Go and invite first madam and second madam. Quick, all of you, Lao Tzu, stand properly. If you don't let Lao Tzu see anyone who can't even stand properly and make master unhappy, then don't make a fool of yourself." Zhang Feng frowned slightly. But when he was about to lift the curtain, a big face came up. It was Jia Daoren. Jia Daoren first hurriedly pushed Zhang Feng back into the sedan, then said, "Master, you're not an ordinary person now. You have to pay attention to etiquette. I'm in my own home. Why should I put on airs?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. "You don't understand, do you? Although you're home, where is this? This is Chang'an and 16 capital cities. If you don't pay attention to etiquette in any way, you'll give people a reason to criticize you. At that time, your reputation will be tarnished. That's not good. F***ck my reputation. Zhang Feng have always done things my own way. I don't care who it is. Get out of my way." Zhang Feng was annoyed. He never liked to put on airs. Now, he had to put on airs when he returned home? How could he stand this? Pushing Jia Daoren aside, Zhang Feng walked out of the sedan. The moment he walked out of the sedan, he saw 2 neat rows of guards standing at the entrance of the residence. Seeing the military posture, Zhang Feng nodded repeatedly. Most importantly, this military posture was created by him. He couldn't help but ask doubtfully, "Jia Daoren, this military posture?" Jia Daoren bowed proudly and said, "Master, didn't this little one stay in the mountains before? Moreover, young Master Chen and the others often come to the residence to teach us old brothers, so we learned it. That's right, this was all taught to us by that big black guy." Zhang Feng stared. "What's that Chintiniu doing here?" When Jia Daoren heard this name, he started to complain. "Master, you don't know. In those few days, these guys came every day to eat and drink. We couldn't even drive them away. Second, fortunately, the two madams were kind. Otherwise, Lao Tzu would have kicked them out. Go in and take a look. These guys are still in the residence. Chapter 1250. Good heavens. What the hell? How long had it been since Lao Tzu left the mountain? Now they're here to freeload. Could it be that in the eyes of a bunch of bastards like you, the school rules are just decorations? How dare you freeload when Lao Tzu isn't here? Did the blacksmiths teach you etiquette and shame? Motherf asterisk Kerr, Lao Tzu's beautiful wife isn't even married yet. Zhang Feng was furious. He glared at Jia Daoren and said, "Don't you know how to inform me about such a big matter? Do you still respect me as your master? Tell me, when did they start coming? Also, what time did they come and what time did they leave?" Zhang Feng felt that he was being cheated on. Upon hearing this, Jia Daoren saw that Zhang Feng was angry, so he quickly followed Zhang Feng in and said, "Old master, isn't this because of the mid-autumn poetry meet?" After the mid-autumn poetry meet, these fellows came every day, saying that it was you who ordered them to go to the Directorate of Education, Hongwen Hall, and Chang'an University to teach them gymnastics. They even said that they were following old Li's orders to lay some cement on the ground of your residence to give you a surprise. Zhang Feng was shocked. He knew about this. Since the Mid-Autumn Festival, this group of kids had stayed at the foot of the mountain to promote the White Deer College's morning exercises and to interact with other colleges. This was something that he had discussed with the two deans. He wanted to use this group of stubborn kids to gather information about the 5 families and 7 clans. But what was up with the cement road? Zhang Feng then noticed that the pebbles under his feet, as well as the side paths and the main path, were all paved with cement. He didn't notice it because he was anxious. Now that Jia Daoren mentioned it, he really saw it. It seemed that this was Lao Li's idea. He didn't expect that Lao Li would still remember something that he had forgotten. At this moment, Zhang Yuyao, Jing Shu, and the red-faced Cheng Chumo and the others slowly appeared in front of Zhang Feng. "Greetings, Prince Zhang." Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu bowed. Without waiting for Zhang Feng's response, Li Chengqian and the others walked up and put their hands on Zhang Feng's shoulders, saying, "Let's go, we've been waiting for you for 2 days. Something big has happened." Zhang Feng was shocked. He asked, "What's the big deal?" Li Chengqian said mysteriously, "Regarding the important discovery of the iron mine, this is not the place to talk. Let's find a place to talk." Without waiting for Zhang Feng to speak, Li Chengqian and the others went downstairs and left. Zhang Feng had no choice but to turn around and say, "That, Jing Shu Yuyao, you guys get ready, I'm going to take a bath later." A moment later, they came to Zhang Feng's study. Gao Kan stood outside the door like a door god, staring at Jia Daoren and Du Ziting, the housekeeper of the Zhang mansion who came after hearing the news. The 3 of them stared at each other. Du Ziting naturally didn't need to say anything. As a housekeeper, he knew the destructive power of these bastards after drinking. In these 2 days, he had been watching these bastards and told them not to go to the 2 madams' place. Jia Daoren was naturally concerned about Zhang Feng's safety. Although he knew the identity of Cheng Chumo and the others, he was now the head of the servants of the Zhang mansion, eating Zhang Feng's food. He was no longer a soldier, so how could he care so much? Whoever dared to touch Zhang Feng would be an enemy of his. Even if he knew that Cheng Chumo was Chen Yaojin's son, if he dared to provoke Zhang Feng, he would beat him to death. This was the family rule. Not to mention Gao Kansas. As Zhang Feng's personal bodyguard, although he had been studying outside, he had always regarded Zhang Feng as his teacher. If he could enter the study, then something big must have happened. How could he let an outsider in? Just when the 3 of them were staring at each other, Zhang Feng and the others each lit a cigarette. Zhang Feng asked, "Tell me, what's going on? Didn't I say that when you have nothing to do, you can go back to the mountain or live in your house? Why do you come to my mansion every day?" It would have been better if he didn't say it. Now that he said it, Li Chengqian was angry. "You're right. We went to the major academies separately to inquire about the news. We should have a place to gather today's harvest, right? Do you think it's safe for us to live outside? What if someone hears us? In Chang'an City, except for the mansions of the palace ministers, your mansion is the safest. Where can we go if we don't come here?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng thought about it and had to ask helplessly, "Then what did you find out?" Li Chengqian and the others looked at each other, then took out several pieces of paper with densely written words from their arms and handed them to Zhang Feng. "These are the words we got from the children of the 5 surnames and 7 clans in the Imperial College and Hongwenguan, as well as people in Guanlong and Shandong. The iron mine is not only owned by the Wang clan." Hearing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but frown slightly. He carefully read the contents of the paper, and then he couldn't help but be angry. "Damn it, do you really think that I, Zhang Feng, am easy to bully?" Chapter 1251. The details on the paper were even more detailed. Originally, you had some plans, but the price was that you had to marry a stupid son of the Lu family. How could Zhang Feng be willing to do that? Because of this, the deal of mining cooperation fell through. Now, apart from the iron mines in Jiangnan, there were only the Guanlong group in the north, the Cui family in Qinghe, the Li family in Longxi, and the Cui family in Bolin. However, none of these clans could touch Zhang Feng at this moment. If he wanted to solve this crisis, the only way was to find a mine by himself. But the key problem was, there was still no news from the people who went to Longsho Mountain to look for a mine. What was the use of finding a phosphate mine? Without an iron mine, there was no way to ensure the safety of the 100,000 soldiers in Qiuzi City. At this time, Li Chengqian said hesitantly, "Yesterday, I just received news from Lord Zhang's son that the Qiuzi people are planning to withdraw or prepare to attack. If we continue to delay, the Turks will probably see through our plan." "We can't withdraw." Zhang Feng waved his hand. "How many Mitsubishi bayonets do we have now?" This was Zhang Feng's last trump card, and Qiuzi City could not be lost. Li Chengqian and the others were speechless. They did not know why Zhang Feng wanted to fight Qiuzi at this time. "Fengzi, although Qiuzi has withdrawn, it is still the territory of the Tang dynasty. Do you have other plans?" Hearing this, Chengchumo and the others became a little excited. Zhang Feng sighed and said, "Do you think I, Zhang Feng, care so much about military wars?" T. Li Chengqian and the others could not help but stare at him. Zhang Feng said, "It's very simple. Look, our current water trade route is basically complete, but the Silk Road from the west to the desert is still the main trade route from Tubo and other places to the Tang dynasty. We can go there by water, but what about them? If they came, they would have to use the Silk Road, which is now controlled by the 5 families and 7 great clans, as well as Guanlong. If we want to infiltrate, we won't be able to do it in the long run." When Li Chengqian heard this, he hurriedly asked, "Could it be that you have other motives for insisting on coming to Qiuzi to station troops to intimidate India and the Turks?" This time, Li Chengqian was in an uproar. He originally thought that Zhang Feng only wanted to solve Zhen La's problem this time. But who would have thought that Zhang Feng actually had a trick within a trick? As for Chengchumo and the others, their jaws had already dropped to the ground. They could do whatever he asked them to do. In this round of schemes, they were nothing but a pair of eyes staring at each other. They were nothing. When they heard what Zhang Feng said, although they also thought of something, they were dumbfounded. They did not know what he was talking about. When Zhang Feng saw this, he sighed. "Sigh. I'm still not as good as your Lao Tzu." When they heard that, they could not help but feel ashamed. However, Li Chengqian was a little unconvinced. Zhang Feng did not give them a chance to explain. He asked again, "How many Mitsubishi bayonets do we have now?" 3,000. "But if we dismantle the things in the shipyard and the metal car factory, we should be able to gather 5,000 in a short time." "Metal cars? You're still messing with that stuff." Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. At this critical moment, he had forgotten about those things. Moreover, there was no extra supply of rubber. What was the use of producing tires? Moreover, iron was so soft that it could not support their fabrication. When he heard that, Zhang Feng was amazed. Chengchumo scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "Well, haven't we been looking for people to make them before this? We only remembered this thing when we received news that there was no more iron during the Mid-Autumn Festival. But don't worry, this thing has been discontinued." When he heard that, Zhang Feng heaved a sigh of relief. "That's good. Gather all the things in the workshop. 3,000 Mitsubishi bayonets should be enough. I'll get someone to make crossbows now. All steel crossbows with a shooting range of about 3,000 steps. Hiss. How many steps did you say? When Chengchumo, Zhangsun, Chong, and Wei Shuyu heard that, they could not help but exclaim in surprise. They almost lifted Zhang Feng up. Zhang Feng was already prepared. He had the Mitsubishi bayonets in his hands. When he saw their actions, he smiled coldly. Lao Tzu has been on guard for a long time. 3,000 steps and you're scared? No, that's impossible. Chengchumo and the others could not sit still anymore. They had seen crossbows and ballistas before. They had even personally made them. But how many steps did they take? When Zhang Feng said 3,000 steps, how could they not be scared to death? Zhang Feng smiled faintly and said, "Don't talk about 3,000 steps. When my sniper rifle is made, 5,000 steps will be a piece of cake." Puff. This time, Wei Shuyu and the others could not sit still anymore. They hurried to Zhang Feng's side and massaged his shoulders and legs. They all put on a smiling face and said, "Master Fengzi, please tell us. What is the 3,000-step crossbow you mentioned? And what is this sniper rifle?" "Right, it would be great if you could make one for us, ha!" Chapter 1252. Crossbows. These were things that had been passed down since the Qin dynasty. At least now, they were still the powerful long-range weapons of the Tang dynasty army. But how far could the ballista with the longest range go? 500 steps? The longest range was only 500 steps. But what did this kid say? He said 3,000 steps. How was that possible? However, they also thought that Zhang Feng could make it. After all, if he could make steel, it would be strange if he couldn't make this thing. At this moment, Zhang Feng looked at them and slowly said, "Actually, the thing I'm talking about is similar to the Wrath Strike and ballista you guys are using now. It's just that it's made of pure steel. Although it has a longer range and enough killing power, I just thought about it and realized that this thing is a little too far away to talk about now." Their burning gazes instantly dimmed. "Then what are you talking about? You're talking about something that doesn't even exist? Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" As they spoke, they rolled their eyes and sat back down in their chairs as if nothing had happened. At this time, Zhang Feng was also a little anxious. He said, "Although that thing can't be made now, it doesn't mean it can't be made. As long as you dismantle that iron boat for me, I'll make it for you now. In less than 10 days, it won't be a problem to make 10 ballistas for you. But the point is, this thing is too heavy. How are you going to transport it to Chiotzi? Do you think it's worth it to make 10 ballistas for this thing now?" They thought about it and couldn't help but be indifferent. Zhang Feng was indeed telling the truth. Now that he asked them to dismantle the iron boat, would they do it? That boat was now parked in the Wei River. What was that? That was the signature of the Tang dynasty. That was a sharp weapon in the Tang dynasty's water. Li Shimin deliberately parked it there to intimidate the world. Now he wanted them to dismantle it? Unless they were tired of living. But when they thought that Zhang Feng had other ways, they couldn't help but be eager again. He asked, "Fengzi, tell me, do you have any other ideas?" Zhang Feng nodded and rolled his eyes. "I do have a method, but why should I tell you, brats?" The few of them could not help but feel a chill run down their spines upon Zhang Feng's words. Zhang Feng continued to prick their hearts. Right now, the iron problem hasn't been solved yet. So, no matter how much we talk about it, it's just nonsense. Although there might be an iron mine in Pyrolite Mountain, as you can see, Pyrolite Mountain is currently in the middle of a storm. We can't move it unless it's absolutely necessary. Right now, the main problem is to find the iron ore in Mount Longsho before the Wang clan does. Once the iron ore is found, you can even make hundreds or thousands of ballistas and tens of thousands of composite bows with a shooting range of 300 meters, let alone this ballista. Then, what about the gun you mentioned earlier? Li Qingqian's words made Zhang Feng choke back his words. Zhang Feng glanced at Li Qingqian and sighed. "That thing, we can't do anything about it for the time being. We did produce it before, but the assembled parts are still not good enough. So, we still have to experiment." Seeing that the few of them were a little disappointed, Zhang Feng continued, That's why I promoted this kind of bow that everyone is familiar with. Although they don't have a lot of loaded arrow clusters, their advantage lies in their long shooting range, which is similar to a gun. So, I think that if you can use this thing well, it won't be a problem for the entire army. Moreover, our main goal right now is not this, but to take over the authority of the trade route in Xiaozi City. Zhang Feng walked around the room with his hands behind his back. Then he suddenly said, "Originally, I didn't make these things for killing or war, but to protect our property. But now, it seems that Li Chengqian, quickly go back and tell your father to tell Lord Zhangsun about these things." Previously, Zhang Feng did not want these things to fall into the hands of the army. Although once these things fell into the hands of the army, not to mention destroying the Turks and other places, even attacking the Mediterranean Sea and other places would not be a problem, this was not Zhang Feng's original intention. He wanted to use his wisdom and trade route to slowly make them submit to the Tang dynasty through a policy of conciliation. Originally, this was what he wanted to do when he entered the imperial court in the future. But now, it was different. The 5 clans and 7 clans were a major threat. Moreover, Xiaozi City was the Great Tang's main route to the western regions. Although they had metal boats and opened up the waterways, the boats of the western regions could not compare to their boats. Moreover, they could not afford to use boats, so they would still have to travel by land and be intercepted by the 5 clans and 7 clans. If he wanted to expand his trade route, he had to show his strong capital. What was strong capital? That was military power. Only when he had a military power that could awe the world would those merchants feel safe. In this way, some of the salt and white paper produced in the Tang dynasty, as well as the silk and tea produced by the fully automated textile factories in the future, could be better exported to the outside world. This would allow more merchants to bring strange things to the Tang dynasty. What was this? This was a merit that surpassed Zhang Qian's. Zhang Feng was a little reluctant to give it up. But now, in order to deal with the people of the 5 families and 7 clans, he could only bear the pain and give this merit to the emperor whom he had never met. Chapter 1253. Zhang Feng couldn't be bothered to bicker with them anymore. After talking for so long, they still didn't understand anything. It was still their Lao Tzu who was sensible. At the very least, their Lao Tzu was the one who made the decision. After talking for so long, they still had to go back and talk to their Lao Tzu. Then, they still couldn't get to the point. Zhang Feng was also annoyed. He directly waved his hand to drive them away. Li Chengqian and the others couldn't sit still anymore. As soon as they left Zhang Feng's mansion, they hurriedly followed Li Chengqian into the palace. In the palace, it was currently afternoon. Although it was already the winter solstice, there were still some people in the afternoon. In addition, it was mealtime at this time, and the palace was nervously paving the cement floor, so at this time, not to mention the patrolling imperial guards, not even a palace maid could be seen. However, when Li Chengqian and the others entered the Vermilion Bird Bridge, although it was still the same, Li Chengqian's guards suddenly found that the patrolling soldiers had already hidden in various places on the roofs. At this time, a Jinwu guard suddenly appeared on the Vermilion Bird Bridge, and most importantly, the MO sword in the Jinwu guard's hand was already open. The palace has banned unauthorized people from entering the palace in the afternoon. Even at this time, when Li Chengqian's guard took out Li Chengqian's crown prince token, the Jinwu guard said indifferently, "Except for the crown prince, no one else is allowed to enter the palace." Li Chengqian frowned and directly rushed out of the sedan chair and asked, "What does this mean?" When the Jinwu guard saw that it was Li Chengqian, he hurriedly knelt and said, "This general greets your highness the crown prince. This is the emperor's decree. We don't know the details, but the emperor ordered early this morning to strengthen the door restriction after noon. Then they are not allowed to enter? Do you know who they are? Do you know that we have an important matter? The emperor only said to strengthen the door restriction, but he didn't say to prohibit anyone from entering the imperial city, right?" This, as they spoke, Cheng Chumo and the others walked out of the sedan chair proudly. This time, the Jinwu guards were in a difficult position and could only make way. But why did the emperor suddenly strengthen the door restriction? What did this mean? They didn't know. At this moment he was also eager to know. By the time they entered the Taiji Palace, 2 hours had already passed. The restrictive spells in the palace had been strengthened by a lot. Basically, they would encounter a sentry post every 10 steps. Little Gizi was currently dozing off outside the imperial study. But when he heard the rustling sound, he couldn't help but frown. The emperor had been furious over the incident in Xiaozi City, and he had even received news from the Ministry of Justice that Turkic spies had infiltrated the imperial palace. This had greatly infuriated the emperor. This strengthened the imperial palace's ban. This time, the most relaxed person was Xiao Gizi. At this time, no one had come to disturb the emperor for 6 hours. He had also stood at the door and hit the ton for 6 hours. Little Gizi couldn't help but feel a little angry when he heard that voice. However, when he raised his head, he saw the crown prince hurrying over with a few young dukes. Little Gizi was so frightened that the fly whisk in his arms almost fell to the ground. He hurriedly went forward and said, "This one greets your highness the crown prince and the young dukes." Li Chengqian waved his hand and said, "Let me ask you, what happened in the imperial palace? Why did the restrictive spells become so strict? Is it Chengqian? Come in and talk." Without waiting for Xiao Gizi to speak, Li Shimin's voice came from the imperial study. Li Chengqian and the others were shocked. They hurriedly pushed open the door to the imperial study. They saw Li Shimin sitting on the dragon throne with a cigarette in his mouth and a worried expression. The entire imperial study was covered in smoke and dust. "This son and subject greets your majesty. Rise. Sit. Did you come from Fengzi's place?" Hearing this, Li Chengqian hurriedly said, "Imperial father, this son and the others have indeed just returned from Zhang Feng's residence." Li Shimin asked, "Have you seen Fengzi? What did he say?" Li Chengqian was startled. He didn't know what Li Shimin wanted to ask, but he still told Li Shimin everything that Zhang Feng had said in full detail. Of course, he hid the most important part about Zhang Feng wanting to improve the weapons. Li Shimin took a deep breath and said, "As expected, the incident in Xiaozi City couldn't be hidden from that kid. Tell me, what did Fengzi think of Xiaozi City after knowing that there was a lack of iron?" Li Chengqian was slightly disappointed. It seemed that Zhang Feng was right. Father knows more than I do. At the very least, when he heard that Zhang Feng knew about this matter, he knew that Fengzi definitely had a way to solve it. Although Li Chengqian was somewhat disappointed, he also knew the importance of this matter. He hurriedly said, he said that he would dismantle the metal carriage factory and fully invest in the forging workshop. He was preparing to produce a new weapon to solve the crisis in Xiaozi City. He also planned to let this son pass on this message to Lord Zhongxin. As expected, this kid thought of the same thing as I did. After hearing this, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Men, prepare to leave the palace." Chapter 1254. The Qiuzi army had been stationed there for half a month. At this time, Chang'an city was already full of spies from the Turks and other countries. Even Tubo's spies were active. Although the soldiers of the Tang dynasty had entered the Turks' territory to help them quell the rebellion, the high cost had already overwhelmed Tubo. But even so, Tubo's crisis was still not over. But a new problem had appeared. That was the shortage of food. Tubo was already short of food. Coupled with the consumption of 100,000 soldiers of the Tang dynasty, this undoubtedly made Tubo's situation even worse. It was already on the verge of collapse. Yesterday, what the envoys of Tubo and Tuyuhun said in the morning court made Li Shimin feel as heavy as a mountain. Most importantly, Zhang Feng's academy was newly opened and he had a lot of things to do. Li Shimin didn't want to bother Zhang Feng with everything. Otherwise, when Zhang Feng entered the court, wouldn't he have no fun? Furthermore, Zhang Fengshan would become the target of public criticism. This was what Li Shimin didn't want to see. But at this time, how could Li Shimin sit still when Li Chengqian said this? Although Zhang Feng didn't say anything, Li Shimin vaguely knew that Zhang Feng was waiting for him. Otherwise, with Zhang Feng's character, he would have told Li Chengqian long ago. Why would he wait until now? When changing clothes and disguising himself, Li Shimin called Li Chengqian aside and asked, "What else did Feng say?" He said, he was going to make some strong crossbows with the rest of the iron weapons and a ballista that could shoot 3,000 steps. What? Li Shimin was shocked. However, Li Chengqian said speechlessly, but Fengzi said in the next moment that this thing used up too much steel and that he was going to change it to something else. As for what it was, he didn't say. This time, Li Shimin really couldn't sit still. With a wave of his hand, he led little Gizi, the 3 chamberlains of gold, and the 100 chamberlains of gold that had already set off, out of the palace in a hurry. A ballista at 3,000 paces. There was also the powerful crossbow that Zhang Feng had mentioned before, which had a shooting range of 300 paces. There were also the firearms. These things had been lingering in Li Shimin's mind. He also wanted to pacify the border. However, they didn't have the strength to do so. Once they started a war, not only would it be a waste of manpower and resources, it would also be met with strong opposition from the civil officials. Moreover, no one knew who would win or lose in a war. What if he failed? All of these were problems. 2 hours later, Li Shimin left the imperial city from Yanxi Gate. Even though he was going directly from the imperial city to the residence of the 16th prince, Li Shimin still had to go through a lot of trouble before he finally stopped in front of Zhang Feng's residence. Without waiting for little Gizi to report, Jia Daoren stepped forward and asked directly, "May I ask if you are Lao Li?" Little Gizi suspiciously sized up Jia Daoren before nodding his head. Seeing this, Jia Daoren hurriedly said, "Quickly invite him in. My master is already waiting in the study." When Li Shimin heard this, he couldn't help but smile and shake his head. This brat was still acting as usual. He was purposely luring him out of the palace. "Enter." Li Shimin didn't hesitate and directly called out from within the palanquin. Unexpectedly, Jia Daoren waved his hand and led the palanquin into the residence. As soon as he entered Zhang Feng's study, Zhang Feng came forward to welcome him. "Lao Li, oh Lao Li, it's really difficult to see you now." Li Shimin smiled bitterly and said, "Where do I have so much free time?" As they spoke, the two of them sat down. Zhang Feng smiled and asked, "Is it because of the matter in Qiuzi City?" Li Shimin nodded. "This morning, I heard from Lord Zhangsun that he wants us to pack up the Tang Dynasty soldiers and prepare to evacuate or enter the palace in Tianzhu." When Zhang Feng heard this, he asked, "Is your information accurate?" "When I heard it from Li Gan, I didn't quite believe it, but now it's true." Li Shimin solemnly explained the cause of the matter to Zhang Feng. When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive. It seemed that some things were really beyond his expectations. He also didn't know that this delay had already been delayed for half a month. During this period, he had been busy with the matters of the academy. How could he have the time to care about these things? However, at this time, Li Shimin said again, today, do you know how many spies have been caught in Chang'an city?" Zhang Feng was stunned. Catching spies. At this time, Zhang Feng suddenly remembered why everyone had taken a detour after entering the city gate and why Niu Weili insisted on letting him sit in the palanquin. They were King guarding against spies. Damn, what was going on? When did the Turkic spies become so fanatical? Could it be related to the war in Qiuzi? When Li Shimin saw that Zhang Feng was deep in thought, he said again, "This is nothing. Tubo and Tuyuhun are basically in a state of collapse. The armies of Tianzhu and the Turkic Turks seem to be preparing for a war. 300,000 troops have already retreated from Zhenla and are approaching Qiuzi. The outside world doesn't know about these things." This was all said by Lord Zhangsun this morning. Also, spies have infiltrated the palace and the palace is temporarily under martial law. Chapter 1255. Spies? There were actually spies in the palace. Things seemed to have really gotten out of hand. Zhang Feng couldn't help but frown slightly. Previously, he was only guessing and didn't pay much attention to Qiuzi. However, after hearing Li Shimin's words, Zhang Feng had a feeling that a storm was coming. Zhang Feng asked suspiciously, "Lao Li, are you trying to scare me? The palace is heavily guarded. How could a spy enter? Are you sure you didn't hear wrongly?" Li Shimin didn't want to mishear, but what about the spy caught by the imperial guards in the imperial study last night? He saw it with his own eyes. Li Shimin was speechless. He laughed and said, "I wish I was joking, but look at me. Do I look like I'm joking?" At this moment, Zhang Feng was a little embarrassed. According to the records of later generations, although the restrictions in the palace during the early Tang dynasty weren't very strict, if you had urgent matters, you could enter the palace in the middle of the night as long as you had a special order from the emperor. However, that was relative. The Golden Guards were the best soldiers that were selected from the entire army. Every soldier who wanted to enter the Golden Guards had to sacrifice their own lives in order to do so. If one wanted to enter the Golden Guards, they would have to kill 100 enemies all by themselves and take the head of a leader of the enemy. Only then would one have the qualifications to enter the Golden Guards. However, this was only the qualifications. To truly enter the Golden Guards, one would have to go through an abnormal test. Only those who were selected from the Jin Wu Guards were qualified to enter the Imperial Guards. The top security system of the Imperial City was the Jin Wu Guards. Basically, they were stationed at the gates of the important palaces, as well as the chambers of the emperor and the retired emperor. The Imperial Guards were responsible for the security of the entire Imperial City. Although they were part of the same system, there was a clear distinction between them. The most important thing was that the Imperial Guards were equivalent to the reserve department of the Jin Wu Guards. Once the Jin Wu Guards lacked people, they would directly choose from the Imperial Guards who didn't have any bad records in the past year and had excellent performance. Then, they would be selected from the external soldiers. Of course, this was what the later generations figured out from the records in the Old and New Tang Dynasty books. As for the real situation, only the current Jin Wu Guards knew. Even if they were the most elite people of the Tang Dynasty, the spies who sneaked into the palace must have been helped by someone. If no one helped them, how could they get in? Then there was really something fishy. Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of a person. Are you saying that the people of the 5 families and 7 clans helped them enter the palace? Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin and asked. Li Shimin took a deep puff of his cigarette, nodded, and then shook his head. I'm not sure. For the time being, no one knows who did this, but I'm sure that someone opened the back door for the spies. As for who it is, the people in the palace are doing their best to find out. Moreover, the emperor is furious. The reason why Lord Zhangsun came to me last night was because the emperor wanted to get some Mitsubishi bayonets from you. Zhang Feng shook his head like a rattle drum and said speechlessly, Lao Li, after talking for so long, you just want to get some Mitsubishi bayonets from me. Li Shimin's face stiffened. Although he said it very vaguely, he still couldn't hide it from Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng sighed and said, as for how many Mitsubishi bayonets you want to sell to the emperor, that's your business. Now I heard from Li Gan that there are more than 3,000 Mitsubishi bayonets made, not including the ones sent to Old Nyo. It's your business how you want to deal with them, but I still suggest that you give them to Chiotzi first. Li Shimin was puzzled and said, now, if the matter in the Imperial City is spread out, how do you think we can get these bayonets? After all, at this time, if the news that there are spies in the royal family of the Tang dynasty is spread out, it will affect the morale of the army. Who said that? Zhang Feng asked and smiled faintly. Seeing Zhang Feng smile, Li Shimin couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This bastard seemed to have thought of something again and asked hurriedly, do you have a way? Zhang Feng nodded and asked, let me ask you now, who wants to see the border most? Was there a need to ask? Wasn't this what the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans did? Once the border was in trouble, the emperor couldn't focus on dealing with the 5 surnames and 7 clans and couldn't focus on finding the iron mine. This was an opportunity for them. It was a diversion, a chance to give them a breath and a chance to infiltrate everywhere. Li Shimin said without thinking, just say that it's the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans who are afraid that we will find the iron mine, right? Zhang Feng laughed and said, it seems that you, Lao Li, have been with me for a long time and have learned to infer many things from one case. Yes, it's the 5 surnames and 7 clans. Their goal is to stop us from finding the iron mine, so that they can infiltrate the place where we are looking for the iron mine. They can find the iron mine one step ahead of us and distract the emperor's attention. Most importantly, they can infiltrate my White Deer College. But they don't think that Lao Tzu is easy to mess with. Lao Tzu has been guarding against them for a long time. Chapter 1256. After Li Chengqian and the others left, Zhang Feng had been trying to figure out the ins and outs of this matter. He really found that there were shadows of the 5 surnames and 7 clans in many places. For example, the coal mine incident, the civil strife in Tubo that broke out at the same time, the abnormality of the Turks, and the sudden siege of Zhenla by the Indians. None of these seemed to be related, but Zhang Feng could vaguely feel that things were not so simple. But now, the sudden loss of the iron mine and the Tubo incident had not been resolved. Instead, there were more serious changes, and the return of the Indian and Turk armies. Plus, such a thing happened in the imperial city. At this moment, Zhang Feng thought about the cliched movies and dramas of the future, as well as the novels of those brainless authors, and understood. Damn it, there must be someone behind this. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental? However, although Li Shimin had some guesses about all of this, he still did not dare to believe that someone could have such great ability to manipulate such a big situation. At this moment, Zhang Feng said softly, "Lao Li, I have a bold guess. Do you really think that the 5 surnames and 7 clans are behind this?" Li Shimin was a little confused. He looked at Zhang Feng and asked, "Do you have any ideas?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Based on my understanding of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, they will easily strike at our vital points. Moreover, it is impossible that the 5 surnames and 7 clans do not know that once they act rashly, it will only give the emperor an excuse. Once that happens, their entire clan will be exterminated. More importantly, our emperor is not just anyone. He is not afraid of the 5 surnames and 7 clans." Li Shimin could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Am I that scary? Or, in this kid's eyes, am I still a brute who only knows how to use swords and sabers? However, after thinking about it, Li Shimin still asked unhappily, "What do you mean? Do you think that the emperor is that kind of tyrant?" Zhang Feng waved his hand repeatedly. No, what are you talking about? How could I have such thoughts? Aren't you afraid that the walls have ears? Aren't you afraid of losing your head? Zhang Feng glared at Li Shimin, seriously wondering if there was something wrong with this guy. He even dared to say such disrespectful words. Zhang Feng said speechlessly, "What I mean is that the emperor has always been a person who acts swiftly and decisively. Moreover, he has been trying to get rid of these big clans for a long time. Otherwise, do you think our academy could have been set up? It's all because His Majesty thinks that our academy is another force that stands on the side of the common people apart from those aristocratic families and can be used by him. Otherwise, do you think our academy can be set up?" Li Shimin also didn't expect that Zhang Feng could actually see through this layer of meaning. He couldn't help but be secretly shocked. If this kid saw through his intentions, then, at this time, Li Shimin really realized the seriousness of the matter. It seemed that he had still underestimated this kid. But this was no longer important at this time. Li Shimin quickly changed the topic and said, "Fengzi, then tell me, if this is not done by the people of the 5 families and 7 clans, then who could it be? After all, this is definitely not something that a small force can do." Zhang Feng nodded. This was also what puzzled him. You said that it was the Wang clan of the 5 families and 7 clans? This was a little bit of a sign. But Zhang Feng's understanding of the 5 families and 7 clans characters made him a little confused. That was, if he became hostile with the people of the Wang clan at this time, it would definitely not be a small fight. It would be a direct and comprehensive revenge. If so, then how could Zhang Feng jump up at this time? He had long been suppressed by the 5 families and 7 clans to the point of being unable to breathe. As for Guanlong and the Shandong aristocrats, these were all possibilities. But Zhang Feng didn't see any intention to target him at this time from these forces. This was what puzzled Zhang Feng the most. Zhang Feng shook his head and said, "Forget it, let's talk about this later. But we still can't relax the dikes of these big clans. Let's wait until the iron mine is found and then we'll see." Li Shimin smacked his lips. Just now, he also thought of a lot, especially about the people of the 5 families and 7 clans. No one understood them better than him. At this time, when he heard Zhang Feng say this, he could only sigh and say, "I heard that old Chen and old Yu took a large number of people to find the iron mine, and seemed to have a small conflict with the people of the Wang clan. But the iron mine you mentioned still hasn't been found. Could it be that, as you said, there is no iron mine at all? Zhang Feng's eyes widened. How could there be no iron mine? That place, according to my master's analysis of the soil composition and so on, the iron mine reserves in that place can't be finished in at least 200 years even if all the miners of the Tang dynasty gathered together to mine it. Tell me if I'm wrong. Zhang Feng felt a little embarrassed. After all, these were some things he knew roughly, and he had never really been to these places. After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng described the area of Luochuan according to the description of the iron mine distribution in his memory, and said, "Tell old Chen and the others not to go to places with lush vegetation and to specifically look for stone mountains. It's best to go as close to the north as possible and dig underground. Don't raise your head to look at the sky, the mine is underground." Chapter 1257. Li Shimin came out of Zhang Feng's house in a daze. After Li Shimin left, only then did Li Chengqian and the others poke their heads out and enter Zhang Feng's courtyard through the back door of Zhang residence. As soon as they entered Zhang Feng's study, they let loose again. "Fengzi, what did you say to Second Master Li just now? Why are you so secretive?" Cheng Chumo asked curiously. Zhang Feng glanced at them and scolded in a somewhat speechless manner, "Look at you guys. Do you still look like my disciples? You are representing Bai Lu Shu now." Seeing Zhang Feng nagging, Cheng Chumo waved his hand casually and said, "Come on, we are only like this in your territory. Do you think we are still sloppy on the street?" In an instant, Zhang Feng choked and couldn't say anything. What could he say? He waved his hand angrily and said, "Don't stand on Lao Tzu's side. Drive all the students of Chang'an University to the mountain today. By the way, what's the name of Lao Feng's son? Is he also in Chang'an University? Isn't he called Feng? Cough, 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 Tinu, your father is here." Zhang Feng was speechless as he looked at Wei Shuyu, who suddenly burst out and slapped the back of Chen Tinyu's head, and Zhang Sun, who was about to strangle his neck. He was a little confused. "What are you doing?" Zhang Sun was betrayed by Li Qingqian and kicked his butt. Zhang Sun instantly bounced up. Looking at Zhang Feng, who was close at hand, Zhang Sun scratched the back of his head and said with a smile, "No, no, no, it's just a joke to liven up the atmosphere. Hey, you continue." Zhang Feng, "Come on, don't mess around. I just asked what Lao Feng's son's name was. Tell me." Only then did Chen Chumo react. He looked at Zhang Feng, who was glaring at him, and said, "Well, he wants a pair of rooms." Zhang Feng was a little confused. There was someone with this name? Old Feng looked like a scholar. How could he have come up with such a lame name? Zhang Feng couldn't help but ask, "What's 1 and what's 2? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 1 pair of chopsticks?" Cheng Chumo looked at Li Chengqian and the others and answered carefully. If he said it wrong, then he was really dead. Zhang Feng was completely dumbfounded when he said that. Did he really come up with such a bad name? However, this was other people's family matter. He couldn't ask anything. He just waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and do your work. Tonight, I'm going to test your previous learning. If you pass the test, starting tomorrow. If you don't pass the test, get the hell back up the mountain. From now on, you're not allowed to leave the mountain without my permission." This time, Li Chengqian and Dun completely exploded. Was Fengzi angry? Or could it be that something big was about to happen? But since Zhang Feng said so, how could they sit still? One after another, they scampered outside. They were afraid that if they were too slow, they would be sent back to the mountain by this god of plague. Then they would really be wronged. The most important thing was that Zhang Feng only said it would be at night, but didn't say what time it would be. There was still some time before night. This was enough time for them to go back and revise. At the very least, they could pull Hao Chujun and the others over to tutor them. At this time, face and whatnot were all nonsense. It would be an honor to be able to stay. If outsiders knew that they were chased up the mountain by Zhang Feng because they failed the test, with their Lao Tzu's temper, it would be strange if he didn't beat them to death. After the few of them left, Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu then entered Zhang Feng's study and handed him a cup of hot tea. Then, Zhang Yuyao asked hesitantly, Prince Zhang, I heard from the other young masters that Sister Yu seemed to have been wronged in Jiangnan. Why don't you? It's good that you two are here. Come, help me grind the ink. I want to do a test paper later. Zhang Feng directly interrupted the two girls. He didn't know why Zhang Yuyao would suddenly say such a thing. How much courage did it take for her to do so? In his mind, this little girl next door had always been shy and helpless. At this time, how could he know who had bewitched her to suddenly say such a thing? Besides, Zhang Feng's innate sensitivity told him that there was definitely something wrong with a woman and another woman. Moreover, it was the kind that didn't have a reason for. Seeing this, Jingshu gently nudged Zhang Yuyao and asked, What is Prince Zhang preparing? Test paper. It's an examination paper. Li Gan and the rest have learned from me. I'm going to test them and see what they've learned during this period of time. Moreover, they've been neglecting their studies for the past few days. I want to see what they've neglected. As for Yu's matter, she has her own plans. I'm speechless and worried about this matter. Chapter 1258. Did Zhang Feng dare to talk about Yu? He dared not. After all, he was crazy. At this time, after seeing that the two women no longer talked about this matter, Zhang Feng breathed a deep sigh of relief. In fact, the test was not the main reason. The main reason was that Zhang Feng wanted to know what these guys had learned. After all, the autumn planting had already begun. After the emperor finished the sacrifice, it would officially start. How much time did he have? In less than half a month. And the autumn planting was a matter of great importance. If Zhang Feng was careless, the reputation he had accumulated would be finished. And most importantly, Zhang Feng wanted to find out from this incident which direction the big hand behind the scenes came from. This was the main point. After all, he was the one who had advocated the idea of boats and water. Because of his words, the people recognized his identity as a great scholar. If he were to produce phosphate fertilizer at this time, his identity would be completely solidified. To Zhang Feng, this was a win-win situation with no downsides. Autumn afternoons were the shortest. By the time Zhang Feng finished his examination papers, 4 hours had already passed. At this time, candles had already been lit in the room, and the voices of Li Chengqian and the others could be heard from outside the study. After Zhang Feng finished writing one by one, he looked at the two women and said with a smile, Thank you for your hard work. Do you want to watch the test together? Zhang Yuyao really wanted to see it, but Jing Shu rushed ahead of Zhang Yuyao. She shook her head and said, We are a little tired, and Yuyao Jejia wants to go back to the Fu. I will send her off. After the two girls left, Li Chengqian and the others reluctantly walked into Zhang Feng's study. Following behind them was a young man wearing a black robe and a white jade crown. He was very handsome, and his face was somewhat similar to old Feng Zhang's. He was standing at the door of the study. After seeing Zhang Feng, the youth hurriedly bowed and said, Student Feng Yishuang greets benefactor. Zhang Feng nodded and pointed to his side. Since you are here, we are all brothers. But in front of outsiders, we still need to show respect. Let me ask you, when you were at Chang'an University, did you learn mathematics? Cheng Chumo hurriedly said, You don't know, this grandson is a pervert. Every time we go down the mountain, he will pester us to ask about the things we learned. Then, the book you gave me was also won by this kid. Cheng Chumo's voice became softer and softer as he spoke. In the end, he glanced at Zhang Feng guiltily. Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't say anything, he returned to normal. Zhang Feng nodded and praised Feng Yishuang greatly. What he didn't expect was that this guy was really a pervert. He originally thought that Du Dabing and Li Qian were the most talented, but compared to this Feng Yishuang who secretly learned from them, they were simply incomparable. This guy was born for physics. Good. Very good. You brats, look, you were taught by Lao Tzu personally. Look at him, he secretly learned from you. You can't even compare to him. Aren't you ashamed? A few of them stared at Feng Yishuang with some resentment. They were also wronged. They spent all their time doing this and that. How could they have time to do this? If they had time, they would be 100 times better than this guy, but now they didn't have that chance. Zhang Feng was too lazy to argue with them. At this time, his head was swollen and painful. He still had to study how to do this thing tomorrow morning. Moreover, he still had to go up the mountain and ask Mokido to make the experiment equipment. All of this needed time. Okay, stop arguing. Let me ask you, did you ask the people from Chang'an University to leave? Also, did Li Gang and old scholars say anything? A few of them shook their heads like a rattle drum. Today, when they told them the news, these guys didn't even wait for Li Gang and old scholar to react. They rushed out of the school gate as ferociously as if the floodgates had been opened. What could Li Gang and old scholar do? They could only follow the crowd up the mountain. As for the matter of the girls' school, the two of them discussed and bought a new house in Chang'an City for the girls' school. When the time was ripe in the future, they would start to move the female students. After all, the female students in this era were different from the male students. If something went wrong, it would be a big problem. After everything was clear, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "This is the first mock exam. You guys better cheer up. This time, not only will I announce the results to the whole school, but I also need you to take it back and let your father personally sign it. You have to think about the consequences." Hearing this, Cheng Chumo's face instantly turned bitter. He said, "Fengzi, can I not take the exam? Can I go back to the academy now?" Zhang Feng glared at Cheng Chumo and said fiercely, "You want to admit defeat now? It's too late." Chapter 1259. The mock test was not ideal. After looking at the test papers, Zhang Feng even had the urge to beat someone up. Although Zhang Feng had used paste to cover up everyone's name on the test papers, thinking that this would prevent plagiarism, he still underestimated the ability of this group of bastards. Why would there be a need to plagiarize the answers? There were 7 monkeys on the tree. How many would be left after the arrow was shot? Take a look at their answers. Cheng Tinyu's answer was still his style. Zhang Feng did not find it strange. After the arrow was shot, the 7 monkeys were all lying on the ground. Alright. Zhang Feng tolerated it. But Li Qian actually said that there were 6 monkeys on the tree? What was the meaning of this? Did he think those monkeys were idiots? Did they not know how to hide? As for the others, Zhang Feng could not help but stop looking. He seriously suspected that if he finished looking, his heart would suddenly explode and he would die. In the end, Zhang Feng still looked at Fang Yishuang's test papers. Although there was not much that was outstanding, it was still acceptable. Finally, Zhang Feng finished looking at all the test papers. He was too lazy to grade them. If their father saw this, Zhang Feng suspected that he would not be able to see them tomorrow morning. Sigh. Zhang Feng looked up and sighed. At this moment, he finally understood how he was beaten up by his teacher when he was mischievous when he was young. When he grew up, he was even proud of it. The angry teacher chased him all over the field to beat him up, damn it. Fortunately, Lao Tzu was not a real teacher. Otherwise, he would be angered to death and suffer internal injuries. Li Chengqian and the others also felt a little guilty, especially when they saw the expression on Zhang Feng's face. Li Chengqian bumped Dugo. Zhang Feng's expression did not change when he looked at Dugo's test papers. Dugo did not dare to say anything. But under Li Chengqian's threatening gaze, he still admitted defeat and asked, "Fengzi, did we do well?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he had the urge to vomit blood. He resisted the urge and rubbed his face hard. He tried his best to maintain his poise and said, "Well, it's okay." Zhang Feng seemed to have used up all his strength. Then, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said weakly, "That's all for today. Tomorrow morning, all of you will go to Chang'an University." After that, Zhang Feng staggered away. Everyone was dumbfounded by what they saw. "Brother Gan, what's going on? Is Fengzi sick?" Zhang Sun asked as he looked at Zhang Feng's back. Li Chengqian also looked at Zhang Feng doubtfully. He shook his head and said, "I guess he's tired?" The next morning, Zhang Feng woke up early, which was rare. On a whim, he did a set of morning exercises with Jia Daoren and the others in the courtyard. Then he walked out of the mansion leisurely. He ate breakfast from the street stalls as he walked to Chang'an University. But today, the people on the street were avoiding Zhang Feng as if he was the plague. There were even some people who knew Zhang Feng. After seeing Zhang Feng, they were no longer as close as before. Instead, they were respectful and reverent. This made Zhang Feng instantly lose the idea of chatting with them. At this moment, a voice caused Zhang Feng to be somewhat dumbfounded. "Master, are you really master?" Zhang Feng looked suspiciously at the old man in front of him, who had lost most of his teeth, and asked, "Sir, are you calling me?" When the old man heard Zhang Feng's words, he was so excited that he danced with joy. It's me. Master, have you forgotten me? I'm the 3 old men in charge of the brewery." When he said this, Zhang Feng suddenly realized. He suddenly remembered that the old village chief had told him last time that the potatoes seemed to have sprouted. Now that he saw the old man, how could he not know? He hurriedly asked, "Why didn't you stay in the mansion? Why did you come out?" The old man chuckled and said, "Yesterday, second madam gave me my salary. Today, I took the time to send the money back. My family is still waiting to eat." Zhang Feng suddenly realized, but he was still a little curious. Although he had moved here, he was still a hands-off shopkeeper. He had never given a penny back to the family. When he heard the old man's words, he was a little confused. Then, "Have you heard where second madam's money comes from? Also, how much is your monthly salary?" This time, it was the old man's turn to be confused. With trembling hands, he took out a receipt from the accountant and said, "All the servants are paid 50 copper coins a month. This doesn't include the reward from second madam during the last mid-autumn festival. As for the accountant and the like, this old man doesn't know." 50 pennies per person? How many people were there in the family? Where did this money come from? These 3 questions made Zhang Feng's face turn red with embarrassment. He didn't know where Jingshu got the money, but at this time, as a man, this was too embarrassing. But after searching his entire body, he couldn't even find a single copper coin, let alone a single ticket. When Zhang Feng saw this, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. He saw a Chang'an restaurant next to them and went straight into the restaurant with the old man. The young man in the restaurant was quite discerning. When he saw Zhang Feng come in, he was stunned at first, then ecstatically said, "Come, President Zhang is here. Our big boss is here." In an instant, all the diners and shopkeepers in the hotel shouted out in unison. Zhang Feng hurried forward and cupped his fists to everyone, then pulled the shopkeeper into the inner room. As soon as they entered the door, Zhang Feng said directly, "Withdraw 1,000 strings of cash for me and send it to the mansion." The shopkeeper didn't expect this mysterious boss to be so straightforward. He directly took out 10 banknotes from the accountant and handed them to Zhang Feng, saying, "Big boss, this is 30,000 strings of cash. Please keep it well. If you encounter any difficulties, just say the word. Our restaurant has nothing but money." Zhang Feng was unhappy. More importantly, he was flustered. He glared at the shopkeeper and said, "What are you talking about? Do I look like someone who is short of money? I just have some savings for the time being." The shopkeeper suddenly understood. "No wonder. I was thinking that a few days ago, our boss sent 300,000 strings of cash to your mansion. You spent it all?" Zhang Feng choked and his eyes widened. He asked in a trembling voice, "How much?" 300,000 strings of cash. Chapter 1260. Zhang Feng couldn't figure it out. But he didn't want to think about it anymore. He could just go back and ask. It was useless to think about it. He originally wanted to go back and check on the potato sprouts, but after thinking about it, he decided to go back to Chang'an University first. When Zhang Feng arrived at the academy, it was almost noon. He hadn't been to Chang'an University for a long time. It was still the same, but it was a little cleaner than before. There were many unknown flowers and evergreen trees in the courtyard. The whole courtyard was filled with the fragrance of osmanthus, making the whole academy seem to be in a sea of flowers. Li Chengqian and the others were sitting in the study hall of Chang'an University, bored to death. When Zhang Feng came in, they stood up as if they had been electrocuted. It was also the first time that Zhang Feng gave a serious lesson in such a place. The walls around the study hall were hung with poems and ink paintings of great masters, both ancient and modern. Behind Zhang Feng, which was above the lecture hall, there was a portrait of Confucius that was as tall as a man, and there were 3 incense sticks burning in front of it. Zhang Feng looked at the portrait of Confucius, then turned around and said, "Do you know why I'm here to give you a lesson today?" They didn't know what Zhang Feng was going to do. They shook their heads and sat still. At the moment when Zhang Feng started the lesson, they all lit up a cigarette at the same time, which made Zhang Feng confused. "What are you doing?" The few of them were also taken aback. Zhang Feng waved his hand and pointed at Fang Yai. "Yi Shuang, tell me, what's going on? Who said that we can smoke in class?" Fang Yai was stunned. But he still said, "Mr. Dean, Mr. Zihuai and Mr. Wenji said that smoking can help one's mind, so we can smoke in the university." There was such a damn reason? Zhang Feng was confused. Since when did smoking become a good match for this? Zhang Feng glared at Chengchumo and the others. Seeing them nod their heads, he was speechless. He patted his forehead to lower his blood pressure a little before saying, "From now on, if anyone dares to smoke in my classes or when I do experiments, Lao Tzu will break their legs." This time, Li Qingqian could no longer sit still. He was the crown prince. He had to take care of this matter. "Fengzi, where did this come from? Indeed, after smoking this cigarette, you won't feel sleepy, and you can even replace your spirit." Even Mr. Bo Shi and the others in the academy didn't say anything. "So, according to you, Lao Tzu didn't keep his word." Zhang Feng was also anxious. This time, Li Qingqian was speechless. He cupped his fists and sat down. "You're awesome, so whatever you say goes." However, Fang Yai was different. He quickly asked, "Sir Dean, what do you mean by that?" Seeing that there was finally someone who knew what was good for him, Zhang Feng's mood calmed down a little. He said, "Although this thing is good, eating too much of it can also become poison. I advise you to wait. If you have nothing to do, it's better to smoke less. Don't you think it's suffocating?" After Zhang Feng finished speaking, the few of them could not help but twitch their noses. They stared at the gray room and said, "No." Zhang Feng was completely speechless. He waved his hand and said, "I don't care when you're in classes like this, but try to smoke less. However, when I do physics experiments in the future, if anyone dares to let me smoke, Lao Tzu will really beat him to death." The few of them were even more confused. They could smoke one moment, but they couldn't the next. What did that mean? "Teacher, may I ask why we can't smoke in physics experiments?" Zhang Feng was speechless. "It'll explode." "What do you mean by explode?" "Explode. It means that everything we're sitting in and this house will go up into the sky. There won't be anything left." When the few of them heard that, they could not help but be shocked. They could not help but think of the scene of the heavenly lightning striking the ground. Could it be that doing an experiment was so dangerous? Oh my God, what kind of magical thing was that? It could cause such a big commotion? The few of them could not help but feel a surge of excitement. Although they did not know what the mysterious experiment was before, when they heard Zhang Feng say that, they were really looking forward to it. Of course, they automatically filtered out Zhang Feng's words about the explosion. Who knew what the explosion was? Moreover, it was autumn. How could there be such an explosion? Fengzi also said that as long as they did not smoke, it would be fine. Then, wouldn't it be fine if they did not smoke? Zhang Feng did not know if the few of them understood, but when he saw that their faces were shining with excitement, he could not help but feel a little speechless. All right. Smoke less in the future." Zhang Feng stopped being long-winded and began to explain the formal physics lesson to the few of them. The so-called formal was actually junior high school physics. For the elementary school part, Zhang Feng had already explained it to them previously. For this test, Zhang Feng also did a simple test. Although it was not satisfactory, it was still considered a pass. Moreover, they were basically familiar with what they needed to learn. A small experiment of extracting phosphate fertilizer did not need to be too complicated. This lecture lasted for a full 4 hours. It was only when Zhang Feng was dizzy from hunger that he stopped. However, when Zhang Feng walked out of the study hall, Jia Daoren was standing at the door with a face full of smiles. He bowed and said, "Master, the workshop on the mountain sent 10 big wooden boxes. They said that you must open them personally, so I've brought them over for you." Zhang Feng was overjoyed when he heard that. After sending Jia Daoren away, he carefully opened the boxes. The boxes were full of hay. However, in the middle of the hay, there were transparent and strangely shaped things. Zhang Feng was wild with joy when he saw it, but Li Chengqian and the others were like monks. They were confused. Even after racking his brain, he still couldn't figure out what these things were. In the end, the few of them compromised. They squatted beside Zhang Feng and touched the transparent things that Zhang Feng placed one by one on the ground. They asked, "Feng Zi, what are these strangely shaped things? What are they used for?" When Zhang Feng heard that, he held up an object with a big belly and an abnormally long neck. He said, "This thing is a treasure. It's an indispensable thing for experiments. It's called glass. The newer model is called glass container." Chapter 1261. Zhang Feng didn't know how to introduce it to them. However, he still patiently introduced these things to Zhang Feng in detail. After all, these things were going to accompany their daily lives for a long time. Although Zhang Feng didn't know if instilling these things into them at this time would change the trajectory of history, he couldn't care so much at this time. After all, things had developed to this point at this time. He couldn't just watch the people around him starve to death for a little food, right? After all, if it was in his hands, it would only be a matter of convenience. After spending another hour, Zhang Feng explained the characteristics of these things and the general situation of using them to them. After that, he couldn't take it anymore. Then he waved his hand and said, "That's all for today. I'll give you homework today." While speaking, Zhang Feng pointed to the osmanthus in the courtyard and said, "Do the osmanthus flowers smell good?" They didn't know what Zhang Feng wanted to say. Whether the osmanthus flowers were fragrant or not, they didn't know what Zhang Feng was thinking. But they still nodded honestly and said, "Yes, they do." "Okay, that's good." Zhang Feng nodded, then looked at them with a smile and said, "Then I'll give you homework now. No matter who you ask, I want your answer tomorrow morning." They couldn't help but be alarmed. They didn't know what Zhang Feng was up to. But at this time, they had no choice but to bite the bullet. Although they all knew that Zhang Feng was up to no good, and as long as Zhang Feng smiled, who didn't know that this kid was going to be a demon? But what could they do? At this moment, they could only look at Zhang Feng with tears in their eyes. They looked pitiful, hoping that Zhang Feng would soften his heart and not give them a vicious stab. But was Zhang Feng that kind of person? Seeing the appearance of the few people, he couldn't help but grin and say, "Excuse me, how is the fragrance of osmanthus flowers spread at this time?" Who the hell knew? Only a ghost would know how he spread it. The few of them were filled with hatred. But before they had a chance to protest, Zhang Feng said with a smile, "Let me remind you that this is a very important question. If I don't see the answer tomorrow morning, or if someone pretends to be sick and doesn't come, I will personally write a letter to tell Lao Tzu about your mock exam results and what happened today." This time, they could only hear the sound of something shattering in their hearts. However, Zhang Feng had already walked away. Zhang Feng went straight back to his mansion. As soon as he returned to the residence, he saw Jingshu pacing back and forth in the study room with an anxious expression. She was eating something with her legs crossed and was looking left and right. Seeing Zhang Feng come back, Jingshu breathed a sigh of relief, but she still closed the door and asked, "Prince Zhang, Chang'an and hotel just sent a bill of 30,000 strings of cash. What's going on?" "I heard it was young master who withdrew it from the hotel?" Zhang Feng nodded and said, "Yes. By the way, I also want to ask you about the money and the expenses of the residence. Where did you get them?" Jingshu looked at Zhang Feng speechlessly and said, "It seems that eldest young master Zhang just remembered the expenses of the residence now?" Zhang Feng's face stiffened. He pulled Jingshu into his arms with a smile. Jingshu wanted to complain, but seeing Zhang Feng's expression, she couldn't say anything. She just stared at Zhang Feng speechlessly. Her eyes were full of fog. When Zhang Feng saw this scene, how could he not know that Jingshu had been wronged? He had to hold Jingshu in his arms with guilt. But Jingshu struggled to get out of Zhang Feng's arms, her face red. "Young master, have you really forgotten how many properties you own?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng nodded and said, "I know. It's just that I haven't seen that damn Lao Li send me money for a long time." Before he could finish, Zhang Feng was dumbfounded and asked, "Do you mean that he sent the money to the residence?" Jing Shu said while holding her forehead with both hands. You don't know anything about it? On the third day after the last move, Old Li sent me 30 boxes of gold, silver, and other valuables. Also, the paper mill sent me hundreds of thousands of taels of silver, and the local government of Chang'an city sent me banknotes worth hundreds of thousands of taels of silver. There are so many that I can't remember them all. If you want to check them now, I'll call the accountant here. Zhang Feng stopped Jing Shu in a hurry and said, No, it's not necessary. You can take care of the residents. I'm just curious. Why didn't I know anything about these things? This was what scared Zhang Feng the most. He didn't know how much it was. Anyway, if he didn't meet the old man today, he really wouldn't know about it. Jing Shu stared at Zhang Feng helplessly and said, Why are you still asking? It's like there's something shameful in this house. You just don't dare to come back. You come back and stay for one night and then run away. Tell me, do you think I have time to tell you? Besides, this is your home. Chapter 1262. Jing Shu felt a little wronged. She had been with Zhang Feng for 3 or 4 months. When she was with outsiders, most people called her second madam of the Zhang mansion. But only she knew how wrong she felt. Zhang Feng had been avoiding the issue of marriage. He didn't even dare to get close to her. She didn't know if Zhang Feng was really busy or what. But a few days ago, she suddenly heard that Zhang Feng had gone down the mountain. And he was living in a small tavern, which made her extremely uncomfortable. Many times, she even wondered if she had made a mistake because she knew Zhang Feng. But now that things had come to this, she couldn't leave even if she wanted to. After all, if she left Zhang Feng, where should she go? This was a thought she had always had. Even every night, she couldn't sleep because of this, turning and turning in bed. Maybe he was still thinking about her? Otherwise, although he was busy, why did he keep avoiding the title of husband and wife? What was he avoiding? At this time, Zhang Feng was also shocked that Jing Shu would say this. He knew that he wasn't good at dealing with women. Even when it came to relationships, he was a novice. He couldn't even be considered a novice. At this time, seeing Jing Shu like this, although he knew that she was angry and felt wronged, what could Zhang Feng do? Seeing this, Zhang Feng could only sigh. Holding Jing Shu's hand, he said gently, After a while, when I'm done with my work, I will give you a grand and unparalleled wedding. No. I don't want to. Jing Shu held back her tears and looked at Zhang Feng stubbornly, shaking her head desperately. At this time, Zhang Feng seemed to have really separated the shadow of the former school belle from Jing Shu. He seemed to have separated the shadow of the former school belle from Jing Shu. I'm sorry. Ignoring Jing Shu's resistance, Zhang Feng took her in his arms and hugged her tightly. After struggling for a while, Jing Shu leaned on Zhang Feng's arms softly. She once thought that she had found someone to rely on. However, in these 3 months of being with Zhang Feng, she found that every time she was with Zhang Feng he would choose to avoid. She could vaguely feel that something was different. Although she didn't say it, every time she heard others call her second madam, she would feel a faint pain in her heart. The two of them went downstairs for a while. Seeing that Jing Shu's mood had calmed down, Zhang Feng said, Jing Shu, I'm really a blank in this aspect. It was my fault before. Although I can't promise you anything in the future, I will always love you. What about them? Jing Shu asked with a red face. Zhang Feng kissed Jing Shu's earlobe. In an instant, Jing Shu's body tensed up. Zhang Feng was also a little confused. That's right, 3 women. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. I don't know, but as long as they are my women, Zhang Feng, will do my best to protect them. Jing Shu was touched and wanted to get up from Zhang Feng's arms. However, Zhang Feng took advantage of the situation and carried her into the bedroom. An hour later, the two of them snuggled on the bed. Jing Shu looked at Zhang Feng's side profile and thought for a long time before saying, I heard that Sister Yu seemed to have encountered some difficulties in Chang'an. When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help but have goosebumps all over his body. He wasn't a gentleman, but how could he tolerate bullying a woman like that? It would be strange if he could tolerate it. Zhang Feng was about to get up, but Jing Shu said coquettishly, What time is it now? If there's anything, wait until tomorrow morning. Oh, Zhang Feng could only obediently return to the bed. Feeling the warmth from beside him, Zhang Feng and Jingshu were entwined together again. The next morning, it was rare for Zhang Feng to be woken up so early by Jingshu. As soon as he went out, Zhang Feng said to Jia Daoren, who was winking at him, "Go up the mountain immediately and find Gao Ken for me." "Master, I have already sent someone. You should wash up with second madam first and have breakfast." Jia Daoren rushed in and winked. It was a look that all men understood. Zhang Feng was so angry that he took off his boots and smashed them. Jia Daoren screamed and then ran away with Du Ziting. "Master and madam, wake up. All of you, get moving. Prepare a bath for master and madam. Those in the kitchen, hurry up. Master needs tonics." Zhang Feng's face was black. "So, what happened last night was a big matter for you. Was Lao Tzu shameless? Why did he have to make such a big fuss about this?" At this moment, an old woman stood beside Zhang Feng and said with a smile, "Congratulations, master." "Congratulations, my foot. What are you doing?" Seeing the old woman reach out and smile at him, Zhang Feng was a little confused. The old woman said, "According to custom, it's a big matter for master and madam to consummate their marriage for the first time. You have to reward us." Zhang Feng, looking at the maids who were carrying buckets of hot water and covering their mouths and laughing secretly, Zhang Feng's face was full of embarrassment. He hurried back to his room and didn't look at the amount of the banknotes. He grabbed a bunch and handed it to the old woman. Take it. Is it okay now? You can all leave." No. The old woman first thanked Zhang Feng and then said, "Master, you don't know, but according to custom, after madam's first time, there are a lot of complicated things to do. Please go to the study room and let me explain to madam and freshen up." Zhang Feng was stunned. What kind of custom was this? But how could he still have the face to stay? He lowered his head and hurried out. He didn't even eat breakfast. After Zhang Feng left, the whole Zhang mansion was in a festive mood. Because Zhang Feng actually took out 1,000 taels of silver as a reward and gave it to all the servants in the Zhang residence. 1,000 taels. There were less than 100 servants in the Zhang mansion. In other words, each of them could get 10 taels of silver. One had to know that in a year, even in other families, the highest income was only 1 tael of silver, which was 1,000 strings of coins. But what was this? This was a great blessing from the heavens. Chapter 1263. Zhang Feng did not leave. After exiting from the main entrance, he took a detour and snuck into the residence from the back door. The reason why he woke up so early today was to go to the East Court to look at the potato seedlings. Those were the real treasures. Once they were grown, it would be a fortune that Zhang Feng could not spend in his 8 lifetimes. Although he was slow to realize that he had just tipped 1,000 taels of silver from the servant's mouth, Zhang Feng did not regret it. Instead, he was a little excited. After all, it was better to enjoy together than to enjoy alone. Moreover, with the current amount of money in the Zhang residence, even if he tipped the servants 1,000 taels of silver every day, they would not be able to spend it all. The East Court was basically a forbidden area in the entire residence. It used to be a very ordinary residence, but ever since some old man brought in something from the outside, the old master ordered that no outsiders were allowed to enter the East Court. This was Zhang Feng's rule, and no one dared to violate it. Even Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao had only seen it from afar a few times. The East Court was slightly larger than the other 3 courtyards, but at this time, the 3 old men were very disciplined. They never lived in any of the rooms, and only built a few thatched huts in a remote corner. Next to the thatched huts, according to the scale of the brewery, they built a shed with a pot. The fire in the shed burned all year round. As a result, the temperature in the area had reached a constant state. Even the nearby trees and flowers were still lush and green. However, 5 steps away from here, the fallen leaves were still broken and tattered. At this time, the 3 old men had already boiled a big pot of water. They did not do anything else, but they kept adding water into the pot. The other old man went to the kitchen to get some food. The few of them gathered around the stove and ate and drank. They did not even notice Zhang Feng walking in. Zhang Feng's gaze passed the three of them and landed on a wooden trough in front of the stove. On the wooden trough, there were already a dozen dark green seedlings growing lush. He looked rather stout. It was only at this moment that the three old men discovered Zhang Feng's arrival. They hurriedly stood up and turned pale with fright. "Master, we have neglected our duties." Zhang Feng waved his hand and squatted in front of the stove with the three old men. Looking at the raging fire in the stove, Zhang Feng suddenly felt as if he had returned to his home in the future. When he was young, the stove at home was like this. Zhang Feng shook his head and collected his thoughts. He pointed to the thatched shed next to him and asked, "There are so many rooms. Why do you have to sleep here?" Replying to Master, "This is our rule. Besides, we are all dirty. How would we dare to defile Master's house? This place is pretty good. Not only can I take care of the seedlings at night, but I can also take care of the fire on the stove. This is already very good. Besides, it's warm here." The little old men are used to it. Zhang Feng was speechless. However, he also thought of the time when his family wanted to bring his grandfather to live in the city. However, his grandfather sternly refused. The reason for the refusal was that it was warm in the mountains. Zhang Feng did not insist. He got up and went to check on the potato seedlings. The potato seedlings did look good from afar. However, when he walked closer, he found that there was something different about them. That was, the seedlings that had just been pulled out were not only a little yellow, but there were also some black spots. This should be a kind of disease, but Zhang Feng knew nothing about it. After all, he really did not know much about agriculture. He only judged it based on his experience of growing up in the countryside for more than 10 years. It should be a lack of phosphorus. Moreover, he had also studied the soil of the Tang dynasty. There were too many alkaline substances. Zhang Feng did not even need to think about it. "Master, what do you think of this seedling called potato? We are taking care of it as if it were our own sons." The old men said somewhat proudly. Zhang Feng smiled and nodded. "This seedling is indeed good, but it lacks fertilizer." When the old men heard that, their faces could not help but change. "It can't be, right? We have been watering it with gold liquid every day according to your instructions. How could such a thing happen?" The first thing they did every day was to check on the seedlings. If there was even a worm egg in the soil, they would immediately destroy it. Not to mention fertilizer. They were all members of the Zhuang family, and at this moment, they were in Zhang Feng's residence. The golden juice that they were reluctant to use before was simply inexhaustible here. They couldn't wait to pour all of the golden juice onto the potato sprouts. Zhang Feng knew that they had misunderstood his meaning. He shook his head and said, "You are thinking too much. That's not what I meant. What I meant was, forget it. You won't understand even if I explain it to you. When you go to Chang'an University tomorrow, I will give you some fertilizer. Every 5 days, you will use the spoon that you used to eat. Wipe a spoonful of the fertilizer and throw it 3 inches away from the potato seedlings. Then cover it with soil. But after using this, I must hear their reactions every night." Although there was no problem with phosphate fertilizer, Zhang Feng only wanted to test whether the phosphate fertilizer was effective. Most importantly, he wanted to see if the fertilizer was really purified successfully. The 3 old men were a little surprised, but they still did as they were told. Who asked Zhang Feng to be the head of the family? Moreover, the things that Zhang Feng had tinkered with before were all unprecedented. Chapter 1264. Cheng Chumo had just walked out of the mansion when he saw Li Chengqian, Zhang Sun, Chong, and the others who had also just arrived at the gate. The few of them seemed to be in low spirits. There were even 2 big dark circles under each of their eyes. If one did not know better, one would think that these guys had gone out to have fun again last night. However, they were the only ones who knew about their suffering. When they returned home last night, they were thinking about how the osmanthus flowers spread their fragrance. If one said that it was the fragrance of flowers, that would make sense. But given Zhang Feng's personality, why would he give them such a simple assignment? This was simply too strange. At this moment, how could they not know that they had not thought of it? The few of them sighed speechlessly and then walked slowly toward Chang'an University listlessly. It was as if their legs were filled with lead. When they arrived at Chang'an University, They asked the veterans and learned that Zhang Feng had not arrived yet. They breathed a sigh of relief. They squatted under the osmanthus tree and stared at it without blinking. After a while, Chang'an seemed to be tired and naturally took off his boots. In an instant, the smell that made one's scalp tingle even covered the osmanthus fragrance in the garden. Li Chengqian frowned and said with some disgust, "Can you not take off your boots in front of me? If you do this again, do you believe that I'll make sure that you don't have boots to wear forever?" When Chang'an heard that, he quivered. But at this moment, Fang Yai's eyes lit up and he said, "I've got it." When the few of them heard that, they immediately looked over. Even Chang'an forgot to wear his boots. "Say it." The few of them asked almost in unison. It was no wonder that they were so excited. When Lao Tzu found out about Zhang Feng's assessment and what they were going to do next, not only did he not object, he even increased the stakes. Whoever dared to be disobedient and failed to learn would be sent directly to Li Jing's military camp at the border after the new year. When all the soldiers in the military camp learned the new drill method, they would return. Whose order was this? This was definitely an order from the emperor. As for Wei Zheng and the others, things were a little better. He directly said, "Can't learn it?" Then scram to the side. "You can't even learn this. Scram further away so you don't embarrass yourself." This was equivalent to tacitly agreeing with the emperor's words. How many subordinates does Li Jing have in Yuzhou? The few of them asked around and felt their scalps go numb. 300,000. Who the F***ck would be able to train someone like that without a few years? After a few years, it would be too late. Therefore, at this moment, everyone was anxious. However, their intelligence did not lie in this. When they heard Fang Yai's words, they were so anxious. After all, with their brains, they could not figure it out last night. Under everyone's eager gazes, Fang Yai said, "Smell it. We can smell the osmanthus fragrance, and we can also smell the iron ox's smelly feet." "What is this?" "We can smell it. If we don't smell it, who would know?" When the few of them heard this, their eyes lit up. Yes. As expected of a pair. You can even think of this. Awesome. When this round is over, brother will take you to Swallow Descent Restaurant. I heard that a group of Woku girls came to Swallow Descent Restaurant yesterday. It's very iconic. Cough, cough. At this moment, a series of coughs came from the door. When they heard the coughs, their faces changed and they hurriedly stopped laughing. Seeing the osmanthus flowers in deep thought, Chang'an was so anxious that his forehead was covered in sweat. Finally, after the signal, he put on his shoes. The guard at the door, who was that? That was a veteran. Furthermore, he had met Chang'an once before. Even so, Li Chengqian had no choice but to take out 100 taels of silver to make the guard agree to let them know when Zhang Feng came. However, this was only a cough. If they did not hear it, then it was none of his business. Regarding this, although Li Chengqian and the others were so angry that their teeth itched, they could not do anything about it since they were Zhang Feng's people. Zhang Feng looked and saw the few of them. Seeing their serious attitude, his eyes could not help but light up. These people really had a trace of learning style. However, Zhang Feng sniffed and could not help but frown. Not only was there the scent of osmanthus in the air, there was also an indescribable smell. Could it be that someone had watered these flowers with feces last night? At this moment, Li Chengqian and the others finally saw Zhang Feng and hurriedly stood up. "Ah, Fengzi is here?" Zhang Feng did not want to think too much about it, so he nodded and said, "Did you guys suddenly change or something? Why are you suddenly so serious?" "Hee, isn't it because you taught us well? Moreover, this thing is too profound. It makes us want to die. This kind of feeling is too King wonderful." Chang'an replied with a smile. Zhang Feng was too lazy to pay attention to him. He pointed at the osmanthus trees and said, "Then tell me, what does this osmanthus flower use to spread its smell?" When the few of them heard this, they said in unison, "Nose." In Chapter 1265. Zhang Feng did not expect that these people's IQ would be so low. However, their answers were somewhat close to the correct answer. Zhang Feng once again guided them patiently. "Then tell me more. In this thing, other than the nose, what else does it test?" for example, the wind that we feel as well as the heat, the cold, and so on. This time, the few of them were anxious again. Zhang Feng directly bypassed them, looked at Li Chengqian and said, "Li Chengqian, you tell me. I think you're the most promising one here." "Really?" Li Chengqian could not help but feel happy. His body even straightened a little. Replying to the dean's words, "I think that some rely on the eyes, but some rely on the body to feel. That is to say, the wind, heat, and cold first pass through the skin to know whether it is cold or not." Stop. Zhang Feng could not listen to it anymore. He looked at the few of them, looked around, and said, "What about you? Do you have the same idea?" The few of them hurriedly nodded. Seeing this, Zhang Feng felt a little dizzy. Why can't you understand such a simple principle? Are you pigs? Zhang Feng was a little speechless and asked, "Then let me ask you again. Do you still remember what I said before about aerodynamics?" This time, the few of them were at a loss. Although they knew about aerodynamics, they only knew the name. As for what Zhang Feng was talking about, most of them only knew about it in their dreams or in the wine jar. They gave it to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng was furious. He had the urge to beat them up. However, considering their IQ and the background of this era, Zhang Feng reminded them, "I have already told you the answer in this sentence. Don't you understand?" This time, the few of them were stunned. But they still did not know what he was talking about. In the end, Zhang Sun said with some trepidation, "Are you talking about air?" Zhang Feng gave Zhang Sun Chong a thumbs up as if he had seen his savior. He shouted at the door, "Give Chong Zi a beggar's chicken at noon as his reward. As for the others, their lunch will be halved." How could it be so dark? This wasn't fair. They wailed in their hearts. However, Zhang Feng ignored them and continued, "Actually, this matter is not difficult to understand. Since you have all learned the physics that I taught you before, but look at you. You don't even have this bit of common sense. What are you doing here? If you guys continue like this, then I'm sorry, I'll ask Hao Chu Jun and the others to come tomorrow. Believe it or not, they will definitely learn it in less than 3 days." When Zhang Feng said that, they couldn't help but panic. How could they not know why Zhang Feng called them out alone at this time and drove away all the people from Chang'an University? Wasn't he going to impart real knowledge to them? At this time, when they heard that Zhang Feng was going to give up, how could they not be anxious? They hurriedly rubbed Zhang Feng's arms and legs and served him. Zhang Feng was in so much pain that he almost shouted for help. Only then did they stop. Zhang Feng didn't dare to mention this matter again. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, Okay, I'll give you one more chance. If you can't get it done within 3 days, you can get out of here. As you know, the autumn planting season is not far away. If you put in a little bit of effort, you can get this thing out before the autumn planting season. Then, not to mention others, even your own farmlands will have a big harvest next year. After being criticized by Zhang Feng for a while, the enthusiasm of the few people was finally aroused. At the very least, what was this? This was prestige. As long as they got it out and walked out, they would no longer be the stubborn Chang'an city, but Chang'an city and even the Tang dynasty. They would be the heroes of the world. This was an honor that could not be obtained anywhere else. Fengzi, if we can really get it out, does it mean that we can really be as famous as you? Zhang Feng smacked his lips. This idea was very good, but it was really a long road to achieve. However, now was not the time to attack them. Zhang Feng said with great emotion, "Think about it, as long as you eat food, which one of them won't remember you? Look at the people now, which one of them really has enough food and clothing? This is simply something that can only exist in dreams, but you got it out with your own hands. What is this? This is AF * King Merit. At that time, as long as the people eat and plant in the farmland, they will remember your merits. Forgive me for being disrespectful, but by then, the people will probably worship you at home or put you in the local temple." Although Zhang Feng's words were a little rough, but he wasn't crude in this reasoning. At this time, they finally understood. As if injected with infinite chicken blood, they trembled all over and rubbed their hands and said, "Fengzi, then hurry up, don't just stand there." Zhang Feng looked at them a little speechlessly. In the end, he sighed to the sky. Damn, he didn't expect that the one who defeated him was actually this damn IQ.